See you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the second part session of the 2022 ordinary session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe open. In view of the high numbers of members physically present participating in this part session and the increase in the capacity of the chamber, I remind you that wearing a mask is compulsory. Speakers are allowed to take off their mask when they take the floor. So please, colleagues, put up your masks. In June, we will have different rules. Madam Secretary General, Mr. Deputy Secretary General, Madam Secretary General of the Assembly, ambassadors, members of the Assembly, may I welcome you all here in the hemicycle or online in the second regular part session of this year of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. After our first part session, end of January, and our extraordinary part session, or extraordinary session on the 15th and the 14th of March of this year. At the end of that extraordinary session, we concluded, sadly but unanimously, that the membership of the Russian Federation had to come to an end due to Russia's blatant violation of the Council of Europe statutes by starting a war of aggression against our member state, Ukraine. After having communicated our unanimous position, the Committee of Ministers decided only one day later to indeed exclude the Russian Federation from Europe's oldest and broadest treaty organization with immediate effect. Since then, we are no longer 47, but 46 member states represented in both the Committee of Ministers and our Parliamentary Assembly. Our message was clear and well understood in Europe and the rest of the world. If you cross red lines, there is no longer place for you in the Council of Europe, neither in our Assembly, nor in our Committee of Ministers, nor in any other part of our organization. Starting a war of aggression against your neighbors, in spite of your solemn commitment to pursuing peace, is a red line. I again want to thank both the Committee of Ministers, the Secretary General, and all of you in the Assembly for acting so clearly, decisively, immediately, and in exemplary synergy. And dear colleagues, I call on you to continue this effective synergy in the Council of Europe, first and foremost with regard to the best possible ways to help to restore peace in Ukraine and at our continent, and to help our member state, Ukraine, to regain its national sovereignty and its territorial integrity and rebuild its society, which is until today suffering so terrifying from this brutal assault by the Russian army. Until today, thousands have lost their lives or got injured. Millions have left their homes, looking for shelter inside or outside Ukraine. More than 5 million citizens of Ukraine are now within one of our other 45 member states, depending on our solidarity with them. Among them are more than 2 million children and youth. Inside Ukraine, people continue to die every day. We all are watching with horror the tragic fate of the city of Mariupol, where thousands of innocent civilians have been killed by indiscriminate shelling. And we were all terrified by the images of the atrocities and war crimes committed by the Russian forces in Bucha and other towns around Kiev, where hundreds of people were tortured, where women were raped, and so many people were killed. We know that after each and every statistical number, there is a real human being whose life is taken away or whose future is devastated. May I therefore ask for a moment of silence for all the victims of this war that should never have started and should now end immediately. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, mourning should go hand in hand with offering concrete solidarity and support with the citizens and the state of Ukraine. At the invitation of the Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, I therefore recently visited Ukraine, together with the leaders of our 5 political groups and our Assembly's as our Assembly Secretary General, and offered full solidarity and support of the Council of Europe for now and for the many months and years to come. Dear colleagues, it's cynical but also real. Destruction is done within days. Reconstruction will take years and years and years. This first visit on behalf of the Council of Europe to Ukraine after the beginning of the war was received most positively by our counterparts in Ukraine and appear to be very open and fruitful. I thank again Speaker Stefanchuk and all our Ukrainian counterparts for updating us to the best of their abilities. I wish to particularly praise the Ukrainian Parliament for maintaining its key legislative and other activities in this most difficult time, thus ensuring that democracy and the rule of law continue to work in Ukraine, even under the martial law. Today, I welcome especially the female members of the Ukrainian delegation who did meet us in Ukraine and are now with us here in Strasbourg. They themselves are an example of what parliamentary diplomacy can do when it's needed most. Ukraine and we are proud of you, dear colleagues. Please take care that you stay safe and sound in these dangerous times. Dear colleagues, the focus of this session will naturally be on the situation in and around Ukraine, and we will discuss the consequences of the Russian aggression against Ukraine during a general policy debate on the draft report coming Wednesday. Also, in case our Assembly agrees, we will hold an urgent affairs debate on Thursday to discuss the role that the Council of Europe can play in ensuring accountability for serious violation of the humanitarian law, while considering important actions already initiated by the Secretary General of the Council of Europe and other organs of the organization. I know that more than 100 Assembly members have already indicated the wish to participate in one or more of these debates, and I appreciate all your involvement very much. I wish, however, to encourage you to be as concise as possible in your interventions to allow everyone to express their views. That would be a concrete act of parliamentary solidarity. I also wish already to thank the interpreters who showed understanding and agreed to work longer with a view to allowing the maximum number of members to speak. Chers collègues, lorsque j'ai qualifié en janvier dernier cette assemblée d'agora pour l'Europe, je ne pouvais pas imaginer ce qui allait se passer. Mais la tournure des événements ne fait que souligner le besoin urgent d'un tel lieu de rencontre européen où chacun peut contribuer à la recherche des meilleures réponses possibles aux questions et problèmes pressants. Ce qui se passe actuellement sur notre continent nous oblige à repenser la nature même de notre Conseil de l'Europe et de son objectif de poursuite de la paix par la protection et la promotion de l'état de droit, des droits humains et de la démocratie dans tous nos États membres. Et lorsque je dis nous, je ne parle seulement de nous, membres de cette Assemblée, mais aussi de nos parlements et gouvernements nationaux qui ont tous ratifié le statut du Conseil de l'Europe et la Convention européenne des droits de l'homme et tant d'autres conventions essentielles. Nous devons tous redéfinir les principaux objectifs d'un multilatéralisme efficace, comme doivent également le faire d'autres organisations internationales. La guerre en Ukraine nous fait prendre conscience de la nécessité de conjuguer nos efforts pour éviter le pire. C'est la raison pour laquelle j'attends avec intérêt non seulement les débats de cette semaine, mais aussi la conférence ministérielle qui se tiendra en mai à Turin où, je l'espère, nos ministres des Affaires étrangères se joindront à cet appel en faveur de la redéfinition du multilatéralisme européen et de la confirmation de la nécessité d'un Conseil de l'Europe stimulant et efficace, en particulier en ces temps très difficiles. Je suis aussi impatient de rencontrer les responsables d'autres organisations internationales pour connaître leurs idées sur le renforcement de l'efficacité du multilatéralisme. Chers collègues, il va sans dire que nous regrettons que notre organisation compte un État membre de moins, mais cela ne signifie pas qu'elle est perdue de sa pertinence. De fait, la portée de nos travaux reste large et importante pour l'ensemble du continent, ce qui illustre parfaitement l'ordre du jour de cette session. Nous aurons un débat capital sur l'avenir du traité de Lisbonne et la coopération entre l'Union européenne et notre Conseil de l'Europe. Nous discuterons du rapport de suivi de la Géorgie, de la question de la confiscation des avoirs d'origine criminelle et des autres questions majeures. Nous aurons l'honneur d'accueillir le président de la République italienne, M. Sergio Mattarella, ainsi que le ministre des Affaires étrangères de la République italienne, M. Luigi Di Maio, dans cet hémicycle. Nous élirons aussi là où le juge représentant l'Ukraine à la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. Cette session se déroule toujours selon des modalités hybrides malgré l'assouplissement des règles et je constate que la grande majorité des membres sera présente ici dans l'hémicycle pendant cette semaine. J'espère cependant que notre prochaine session en juin se tiendra en présentiel uniquement, ce que, j'en suis certain, nous attendons toutes et tous avec impatience. Dear colleagues, before dealing with this week's agenda, I would like to pay my respect to one of my predecessors who recently passed away, former President Leni Fischer, the first female president of this esteemed assembly. I have expressed on your behalf my sincere condolences to the President of the German Bundestag, the parliament of which she was for more than 2 decades a dedicated and most respected member. Among her numerous achievements of Mrs. Fischer, we will remember her statement at the second summit of the Council of Europe in October 1997, a historic summit of the organization whose decisions shaped the future of Europe. On that occasion, Madam Fischer declared, and I quote, "Europe is an imposing construction, but it needs a solid foundation. This foundation is provided by democracy and human rights in a pluralist society governed by rule of law. These principles are defended by the Council of Europe," end of quote. Her words, dear colleagues, then are more actual than ever and do inspire us now we are hopefully heading for a 4th Council of Europe Summit of Heads of States and Government to redefine our principles and our role in the years to come. Allow me as well, dear colleagues, to pay my respect to another remarkable former female member who has recently passed away, Madam Elsa Papadimitriou, former Vice President of the Hellenic Parliament and former Vice President of our Assembly. Elsa first joined the Assembly in 2004 as a chairperson of the Greek delegation, bringing her true commitment to democracy and wide political and scientific experience, in particular in the field of environment, regional affairs, and minority protection to the organization. I'm sure that many of you remember Elsa for her charismatic personality, generosity, and dedication to peace. She will sorely be missed by all our friends in Strasbourg who, like me, had the privilege of knowing her and of appreciating her deep dedication to the defense of fundamental values of the Council of Europe. Dear colleagues, I would like to end these introductory remarks by wishing us all a fruitful session week, in line with what is stated in the preamble of the Statute of the Council of Europe, and I quote, "We are convinced that the pursuit of peace based upon justice and international cooperation is vital for the preservation of human society and civilization." End of quote. Thank you very much for your attention. The first item on the agenda is the examination of the credentials of new members. The names of the representatives and substitutes are in document 15504. If no credentials are challenged, the credentials will be ratified. Are the credentials challenged? I do not see so. So the credentials are ratified, and I welcome our new colleagues. Our next business is to consider the changes proposed in the membership of committees. These are set out in document Commissions 2022-04 and Addendum. Are the proposed changes in the membership of the Assembly's committee agreed to? I do not see any objection. They are agreed to. Before we examine the draft agenda, the Assembly needs to consider a request for a debate under urgent procedure. The Bureau received a request submitted by the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights for a debate under the urgent procedure on, I quote, "Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine, ensuring accountability for serious violations of international humanitarian law." At its meeting on Thursday, the Bureau of the Assembly approved the request for an urgent debate and therefore recommends to the Assembly that the matter be debated during this part session as the second item of business on Thursday morning. Does the Assembly agree to this recommendation? I do not see any objections, so it is agreed. I propose that the topic of the debate we have just agreed be referred to the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights for report. Is that agreed? Okay, the reference is agreed to. The next item of business is the adoption of the agenda for the second part of the 2022 ordinary session. The draft agenda submitted for the Assembly's approval was drawn up by the Bureau on the 21st of April. Does the Assembly agree with the agenda as we have discussed, including the urgent debate? I do not see any objections, so it's agreed. Next item on the agenda is the debate on the progress report of the Bureau, presented by Mr. Ian Littlegranger. In order to finish this debate by 6 p.m. and allow time for the second debate, we must conclude the list of speakers at about 5:55 p.m. to allow time for reply and vote. I now call Mr. Littlegranger to present the progress report.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President.
You have, Ian, you have 7 minutes
yes, I know.
to present the report, and you will have 3 minutes to reply.
And it's
you
going
have the floor.
down, so be quiet. Thank you very much indeed. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to give the progress report. But I want to take you back, because progress is the only present of everything we do. In 1939, we all stood across Europe and said, good old Poland, they will hold back the hordes. 1939, cavalrymen on horses charged tanks. It was a catastrophe. The rest is history between 39 and 45. 8 weeks ago, roughly, we suddenly were surprised again. Those plucky Ukrainians, they will stand up, they will fight, they will do what they have to do. And Europe once again was plunged into another war. I'm 63. I hoped in my time I would never see this, ever. Back in the 80s, I stood in Germany looking at a wall, wondering what on earth we were doing. Then a very brave man, Mikhail Gorbachev, made a dynamic speech and brought it tumbling down. And we then said there is a new norm from 1990. That norm is democracy. That norm are countries in Europe working together for the good of all. And we saw the bear, Russia, slowly metamorphosize in a way that I don't think any of us expected, through powerful oligarchs, hugely powerful people, massively rich, massively powerful, under a new Tsar, who brought a sort of democracy, but with dictatorial background. And in that time, we have seen country upon country subjected. I don't need to go through them all. There's a long list, you know them. We're all Democrats. But my worry is this. Some years ago, we allowed Russia back in. And I remember sitting over there, taking nearly 400 amendments through the night, not because I felt it was a good thing to do, not because I particularly wanted to, but I was sort of pretty sure the Russians would not change what they are. Their history is against them changing. You only have to go back for the last 600 years in Russia. Seems a long time. In Russian history, that isn't actually. And they haven't really changed. And the reason we took those amendments was to try to get people to understand where was the change? What had changed? Now, for never 1 second did I ever dream we'd be in the position we are now. I never thought that would happen. But we allowed the bully to continue to bully. We allow bullies to stand up and they think they can get away with it. It doesn't matter which country it is. It doesn't matter how you get to that basic premise. But that is what really has happened in this case. And here we are, this terrible situation with hundreds of thousands of refugees in countries around Europe. A country being devastated by heavy artillery, missiles, ship-launched missiles, and just about every drone you can imagine. Not targeting military assets a lot of the time, targeting civilians. Collateral damage in war is the worst type of war. But when it is perpetrated, because that is the way you grind down a population's morale, then you know there is something fundamentally wrong. When this started, I think, like most people, thought Russia was thinking this is going to be easy. Well, you've all seen the Ukrainians here, haven't we, Mr. President? They're a pretty tough bunch. And there's one or two of them have been asked to leave this chamber for speaking out. Well, maybe they had a point. But they have not stopped. They have not given in. And what have we seen Russia do? Resort to the oldest type of warfare, the oldest, going back into the midst of the millennia, which is take it out on the civil population. Do what you can to destroy it. It doesn't matter if you rape, you murder, you gas, you poison, you do whatever you have to do to break that down. And that is what we're seeing. That isn't warfare. That is genocide. That is objective, disgusting ideal. It's not the first time in history we've seen that, of course it's not. But it is now, the 21st century, 2022. We're seeing it again. We quite rightly threw the Russians out. We had no choice. That was right. In 1949, when this was set up, it was set up to defend democracy, human rights, and culture. We'll leave culture for now. But look, democracy is under threat. Human rights are being abused every single hour of every day in what's going on. And it's not getting better, it is getting worse. When you have a pocket of isolated people, regardless of who they are, where they are, in a steel factory, under an aluminium factory, within a town, the humanitarian disaster is bound to follow. I'm sorry, that is the way it is. So I say to you all this, that we now have a moral responsibility through these reports, which we're going to hear over the next few days. And I've been very critical of certain people here, and maybe be critical again. But I urge us all now to stand together. You cannot say you cannot have armed conflict when you are in the middle of an armed conflict. This isn't an aggression, it's an armed conflict. Yes, plenty of people have got views about, shall we send weapons, shall we not? Shall we be pacifist, shall we not? That is personal, that is up to you. But the reality on the ground is people are being murdered. Not killed, murdered. And that is our responsibility to stand. And I would urge the rapporteurs on both these reports, look at the military options, understand the humanity, listen to history, because history is now being written that will be remembered for the years and the millennia to come. And may I say, Mr. President, this Assembly should be on the right side of history, leading history, pushing history, and understanding history, because we defend democracy standing together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Little-Granger. And now, to start the debate, I first call on behalf of the political groups, the speakers of the groups. And the first is on behalf of the group of the Socialists, Democrats and Green, Madam Petra Bayer from Austria. Petra, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Tini. I will take another focus, and I want to remind you all that about a year ago, or last year at least, we have taken a decision to change our rules of procedure. And this change in the rules of procedure obliges ourselves to bring more women in this assembly. It is now a friendly reminder to all of you not to forget that by January 2023, the number of the women in your national parliaments has to be mirrored here in your delegation, but at least there have to be a third of the underrepresented gender, which is usually the women. So to include women in your international work at your national parliaments already now, to have them ready to take the floor also here at the international banquet. It is a reminder that gender representation by the beginning of 2023 has not only to be in line with the rules of procedure, but also in line with the requirements of the year 2023, or already 2022, of course. And that's about committees, that's about election observations, that's about the leadership of political groups and much more. Since our last assembly, there was established an informal women's working group enshrining all political parties and also women that are not affiliated politically here in the assembly. And of course, at the moment, our strongest focus is on the situation of women in the Ukraine. But I'm very convinced that our network will consist longer than the Russian war in Ukraine will last. What we want to do is to bundle our forces and possibilities to strengthen women's issues in the work of the Assembly, and to really perform gender mainstreaming, give our work a feminist spin, if you want, like that. And the relevant debate is not about who gets sandwiches for free and who not. The relevant debate when it comes about gender balance is about the voices of women to be heard, about the realities of women to be included in our reports. It is about the experience of more than half of the population really to be mirrored in our work. And it is about representation of women and men in all political bodies of the Assembly. And I personally also would very much welcome if men would take the opportunity and debate in peer groups, because I think there is also a lot to debate for men, among men, about changing role models, about shrinking influence, fair share of care work, deal with toxic masculinity and misogyny, and how to curb male violence and vanish the gender pay gap. So I'm sure all of us are needed to reach this gender parity until 2023, and please don't forget about it and start to work about it now.
Thank you very much, Madam Bayer. Now I call in the debate on behalf of the EPP group, Mr. Emanuelis Zingras from Lithuania. You have the floor, Emanuelis.
Thank you so much. Talking about last events here and overviewing our work from last year, our activities, I just remembering that we tried to warn all of you that we're coming to the brink of the war. What was the reason for that? Reason was that we possess the knowledge, especially in Vilnius, of Russian language, and we observe the slogan, who was actually not seriously taken by you colleagues, by some of you. Slogan was degrading by the rulers of Kremlin. The slogan became like a sound of Mussolini or even Adolf Hitler, when during last 20 years we saw every second Russian Democrat in prison. And that started not with Ukraine, that started with Russia. Started with Boris Nemtsov, assassination in front of Kremlin, Litvinenko in London, and other cases, tragic cases and tragic fate, ending with Vladimir Kara-Murza just a few days ago, arrested in Moscow under terrible charges of the absolutely freak law based that if you will say that it's Russian war, they're doing the war against Ukrainians, it's accepted like humiliation against Russian army and can be prison for 15 years. So, having the story from the 90s, especially for those who took part in the liberation of the countries in Middle Europe against communist rule, Middle Europe, Baltic countries, Caucasian nations, Ukraine and Russia, and those who try in the 90s to say no. So Mr. Putin was among those who try to stop Russia, and he was from KGB structures. And now we have country based on the ideology who we never ever discussed that here in this chamber. Mr. Chairman, dear Speaker, I would like to turn your attention not only to the Schwabe's report, who is brilliant, of course, and the amendments who will be there to the report, not only to Alexander Potsy, current urgent report, but to the case of ideology. We should evaluate ideology of the regime, and if we will not make any summary and any outcomes, any solutions for us about ideology, we will liberate Ukraine, yes, but we have Russia with this ideology, and how we will take Russians and will convince them to dismantle the ideology who is behind the war, behind their military aggression, behind the racist Russia Mir, means Ruski Mir approach. Ethnicity above, humanity is above, human rights is above, not ethnicity is above. I'm talking like Holocaust survival family and my mother who spent 4 years in Nazi camp. Thank you.
Thank you, Emanuelis. Now I call in the debate on behalf of the ECDA group, Mr. Zsolt Nemet from Hungary. Zsolt, you have the floor.
Mr. President, dear Secretary Generals, important elections are behind us. Yesterday we had 2 very important ones, and I would like to draw your attention to the Hungarian elections. I would like to express my gratitude to the observation. Many of you have participated in it, and everybody who helped to protect the integrity of elections, including the Hungarian elections. Secondly, about the war, I would like to thank to Ian Little-Granger his very eloquent speech. I believe that the Council of Europe reacted quickly to the war and expelled Russia imminently. In the name of the ECR, I would like to reiterate here that we condemn the military aggression of Russia. We step up for the integrity and sovereignty of the Ukraine, and we remain committed to the unity of Europe reflected in the Council of Europe and the European Union, NATO, and other international important organizations. The key to our success is this unity, and what is the real goal in front of us? That is peace. We should step up and do our utmost to achieve ceasefire imminently and to come back to the diplomatic solutions. And where the Council of Europe has got a very special role, I believe, it is justice. The international investigation into war crimes, into genocide, into crimes against humanity. And for that reason, I am very glad that we are having in front of us Thursday morning this very important debate on this justice subject. And finally, obviously, solidarity. Dear colleagues, it is utmost. And I know that all of your country is doing what you can. The assistance to the fighting Ukraine at present is crucial. We, neighboring countries with the Ukraine, receive a lot of refugees, and we are doing our utmost to help them. And also, it is extremely important that we do our utmost to tackle the humanitarian catastrophe happening in the country. Dear colleagues, finally, the Parliamentary Assembly from the 1st of May is back to normal operation. I hope that our physical presence in the coming days, months, will strengthen our unity under these very difficult circumstances. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Zsolt. Now I call in the debate on behalf of the ALDE group, Madam Lysia Vasilenko from Ukraine. Lysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, Secretary General. First of all, I would like to thank the Honourable Rapporteur, not so much for the report, but for the presentation of this report, for this excursion into history of Europe in the recent years, but also in the history of this Assembly in the recent years. The last 3 months have marked a renaissance of sorts of the Council of Europe and this Assembly. After Russia escalated its military aggression against Ukraine 2 months ago, we have seen immense solidarity among all member states and among all of us colleagues. Solidarity against aggression, against war crimes, inhumanity, terrorist states, and indeed genocide. This solidarity is not just around Ukraine or about Ukraine alone, though. The war has unveiled a whole level of issues in the sphere of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Russia's war on our continent has caused a unity to tackle all of these issues, a unity which we haven't seen for a long time. As we discussed how to strengthen the core principles that allow us to coexist as nations and our societies to strive in a socially just and fair environment, we are also making history, colleagues. Our discussions and our reports are more than just words. Today, we are setting the guidelines to allow democracy, human rights, and individual freedoms to win over the threats of autocracy. This is why we debate terminology so scrupulously and take extra care to use the right words as we revise old mechanisms and install new instruments to protect the people we represent. As we are fixing the mistakes of the past and look to the future during this session, we have 2 very important reports to consider. One on the role of the Council of Europe with regards to the consequences of Russian aggression, and another on the accountability of international crimes and breaches of international humanitarian law. These reports play a crucial role in restoring peace and security in Europe, but also in fixing the rather broken system of global security, particularly the one enshrined in the UN Charter. For the Council of Europe to be able to be an effective organization, it's important for us to identify challenges honestly and correctly, to seek solutions in a timely manner, and to unite efforts to lay the prevention mechanisms down. I wish us all a very good session, a fruitful one, and one which will lead to decisions so very necessary for the welfare of Europe and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Lysia. Now I call in the debate on behalf of the Group of Unified European Left, Mr. George Katrougalis from Greece. George, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Of course, the great challenge we had before us was the Russian aggression. And we reacted to that in an unequivocal and unanimous way. We condemned it as contrary to the international law. And all the leaders of the groups, together with our president, we have visited Ukraine in order to demonstrate this solidarity. But now we are arriving at a time when we should discuss policies about the end of the war and its aftermath. And we have heard already by my dear Ian a version of these policies. Ian has told us it was good that we have reacted to the Russian aggression. But everything we had done before, it was wrong. It was wrong to bring back Russia in the Council of Europe, because history proves that Russia does not change. We told you so. I have completely the opposite opinion. I think that the joint procedure we have agreed is the basic reason now we can have a unanimous stance against the violation of international law. And I think it was a very good policy to try to bring Russia, not any kind of Russia, a democratic Russia, within the institutions of the Council of Europe, and to try to incorporate it in a system of architecture of security. And when Russia has proven to violate the basic rules and values of this institution, we used this joint procedure in order to expel it. But exactly because I wanted to refute the most basic historic argument made by Ian, I would not like to use my personal opinion. I tried to find an author with much greater authority than mine. I found in a recent article in the New York Times by Thomas Friedman a very pertinent excerpt of George Kennan. George Kennan, as you know, was one of the major theoreticians of the Cold War. On his long telegram has been based all the containment policies of the United States vis-à-vis Soviet Union. Kennan was writing in the late 90s when the dilemma was NATO expansion or effort of incorporation through OSCE of Russia to a system of architecture of peace in Europe. And he was writing, critical to the expansion, the following, I quote, "I think it is the beginning of a new Cold War. I think the Russians will gradually react quite adversely. It will affect their policies. I think it is a tragic mistake. Of course, there is going to be a bad reaction from Russia. And then the NATO expanders will say, we always told you so. That is how the Russians are. But this is just wrong. This is not to justify the crimes committed in Ukraine. This is not to justify the Russian invasion. This is just to think what is going to be the aftermath. I think we should, in all means, try to avoid the return to a bipolar world without the guarantees of the Cold War. And that means we should work on new rules and a new architecture of security in our continent. Thank you.
Thank you, George. That concludes the speeches on behalf of the 5 political groups. Now I call in the debate Mr. Eduard Afghanian from Armenia. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. Indeed, the crisis in Ukraine and its humanitarian consequences are of utmost importance for the Council of Europe at this point. And unfortunately, as one could anticipate, Azerbaijan took advantage of the total preoccupation of the international community with the Ukrainian crisis, undertaking blatant actions in breach of European Convention of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. More specifically, based on the government's request, the European Court of Human Rights indicated interim measures by calling on Azerbaijan to refrain from actions that would contribute to breaches of civilians' convention rights and to respect their obligations under the European Convention of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. Despite the foregoing, even after the indication of the interim measures by the court, Azerbaijan has continued to violate its obligations under the Convention. As such, since February 2022, Azerbaijani armed forces have continuously terrorized the population of the bordering villages of Artsakh through various criminal acts of physical threat and psychological pressure, through direct, threatening and intimidating statements addressed to the civilian population using loudspeakers. In regularly played statements, the population of bordering villages are being told to stop farming and leave their homes, otherwise being threatened by physical reprisal of their families. During the same period, on March 7th, the gas supply to Nagorno-Karabakh was disrupted, leaving over 150,000 people without heating, with 1.5 meters of snow on the ground at an unprecedented freezing condition. With much international pressure, Azerbaijan restored the gas supply on March 19th, only to cut it out again after 2 days. Dear colleagues, all of the above mentioned is a classical example of an act of ethnic cleansing. And while on international platforms, Azerbaijani officials often state that the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is over and that Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh can live peacefully in their homes, on the ground, however, Azerbaijan is attempting to force a final round of ethnic cleansing of the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, taking advantage once again of international community's distraction by the Ukrainian crisis. Despite this, however, Armenia remains committed to an agenda of peace in the South Caucasus and sees the final and peaceful resolution of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict under the auspices of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I call on the debate Mr. Vladimir Vardanyan from Armenia. Vladimir, you have the floor.
Chair. Oh, thank you. Honorable Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, yesterday on April 24, Armenians all over the world were commemorating the memory of the victims of the Armenian genocide, organized and perpetrated by the Ottoman authorities in such a cruel and inhuman manner that the international community was obliged to invent a new term for qualification of such international outrages: crimes against humanity. Despite the fact that the consequences of the Armenian genocide are still echoing within the Armenian community, and despite the fact that even today, after 107 years, this issue is still quite sensitive for all of us, the Republic of Armenia, from the very beginning of its independence, has declared its policy of normalization of relations with Turkey without any precondition. We are consecutively following this path and reiterating our willingness to normalize bilateral relations. But are our counterparts as sincere in this process as we are? I would like to show you something. Look, this is a sign of so-called Buzkurt or Grey Wolves, a radical terrorist organization responsible for a series of terroristic attacks and other crimes committed against Armenians, Kurds, other minorities, and organization which is allegedly connected to the assassination of the John Paul II, Pope, and so on. You may ask why I am showing you this sign and what is the interrelation between my speech and progress report. No, dear colleagues, I have no intention to deviate from the discussion. We are discussing here the progress of our organization, progress of fulfillment of our obligation, progress in protection of our values. I'm showing you it because 2 days ago, Mr. Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, the incumbent Turkish foreign minister, has shown this to the participant of the peaceful demonstration in Uruguay, demanding the recognition of the Armenian genocide. It is strange, dear colleagues, that a high-level European diplomat and politician promotes such a sign. It becomes even more unacceptable when it is done by a former president of this parliamentary assembly, a person who here in this hemicycle spoke about democracy, human rights and rule of law, the person whom all of us gave support and right to represent all of us and disseminate ideas of the Council of Europe, protect the European values, allows himself to promote such a radical symbol. It's also worth mentioning that this kind of actions endanger the possible confidence-building process among the two societies. Dear colleagues, here I would like to once again state clearly that Armenia are very devoted to the European values, and we are continue to do our best to normalize Armenian-Turkish relations, expressing hope that our Turkish counterparts will have enough will to open the mutual border and establish normal relations with Armenia and contribute to the de-escalation and building of sustainable peace in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. Now I call on the debate Mr. Samet Seydov from Azerbaijan. Samet, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. You see, dear friends, how difficult to speak in this assembly when your colleagues from Armenia try to mislead this organization, try to present everything which belonging to Azerbaijan and Turkey in a black way. Why my colleagues didn't mention that Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, physically attacked? Why they didn't mention that in the center of Yerevan they had erected the statue for Nejde, the pro-fascist and fascist representative? Why they didn't mention that 1 million refugees we still have in Azerbaijan, and they are not able to return back to the liberated territories because of polluted by mines territories of my country? And still yesterday, Azerbaijanis killed by these mines in my territory. I prepared the report about speech about the peace process, which President of Azerbaijan and Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, agreed under the auspices of Charles Michel in Brussels. I was going to speak about this peace, because the new reality gave us the golden opportunity to create this peace. And it's very strange. I have some cognitive dissonance in my brain, because your Prime Minister said we agreed with Azerbaijani proposals. We agreed to accept Azerbaijani suggestions, which we gave to Armenian colleagues. And now a representative of Armenian delegation speaks against their Prime Minister position, against the national interest of Armenians who are looking for peace in the region. And Azerbaijan has done and will do everything for this peace. My dear friends, time has come to think about reconciliation and confidence-building measures between Azerbaijanis and Armenians. You know, I'm very frank with you, my dear friends. We are even against to be a part of the Committee on Conflict between member states. Because I think, and on behalf of my delegation, we should create an ad hoc committee on reconciliation between Armenia and Azerbaijan, I mean relationships. Enough to speak about the war. Enough to think in a revanchist ideas. Return back to the values of the Council of Europe. And my last point. If in very many years ago, international community properly reacted to ethnic cleansing, to occupation by one state of another state, nothing would happen with Georgia, with Crimea, and now with Ukraine. Time has come to be proper and to do our best for peace in the region. And I invite all my friends and colleagues from Armenia to sit together with Azerbaijan and to think about the peace for Armenians and Azerbaijanis. Thank you.
Thank you, Samit. Before giving the floor to the next speaker, there is a request for a point of order by Mr. Aydin. Mr. Aydin, you have the floor for a point of order.
Yeah. I'm very disillusioned, honestly, you know, because we are having a very private session, which is based on the Russian aggression on Ukraine. But unfortunately, again, the tradition repeats itself. When I listened to my Armenian colleague, Mr. Vardanyan, you know, he made an unsubstantiated, you know, accusation about a signal, about a symbol, which has done, you know, by every single Turkish citizen, wherever he lives or she lives, you know. And why? Because I'm a professor of culture at the same time. I know most of the cultural heritage is based on legends and stories. And if you look at the Turkish background, you know, Turkish culture, we believe that it is the symbol of the exodus from Ergenekon. And that symbol is used any political figure in Turkey, from left to right, from, you know, any group. And it turns to be a kind of friendship and symbol. Now, you know, as if it is a symbol which is totally illegal or forbidden, and having said that, trying to accuse of the foreign minister Çavuşoğlu by doing that symbol. I am telling that symbol is also made by a very famous American university students. University of New Mexico. That is the symbol of that university as well. It is called, in Latin, Lobo. And the symbol of Lobo, being a member of that, you know, university, is requiring to do that symbol. So
Thank you very much.
You know, after such a very good normalization period which has been started between these two countries, why still you are trying to use any simple opportunity?
Thank you very much, Mr. Aydin. This was
create a crisis. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You for making your point of order. No, we are not going to continue this discussion. The next on the speakers list is Mr. Rafael Husseinov from Azerbaijan. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair, dear colleagues. I would like to reiterate the views I expressed in my recent speech on progress reports. In addition to demonstrating the work done and achievements during the reporting period, this report should propose answers to questions about what we should do tomorrow and what we should be prepared for. A timely step is significant in all areas of life. A step taken in time signifies a slight anticipation of the future. The timely step is to anticipate what is happening and help control it. Simply observing events or making conclusions after they have happened is, in the old-fashioned way, just a chronicle historiography. The situation on the continent is far from satisfactory. Various crises replace each other. The arrival of new waves of anxiety is clearly felt. The Council of Europe, as an influential and experienced international organization, is certainly accountable to the continent and the world. All current developments also demonstrate that we have been spectators on many issues and haven't reacted more seriously in time. If 20 years ago the sharpest reaction had been taken to the fact of the occupation by one member state of the territory of another one, if decisive measures had been taken to correct such a strange situation without delay, then similar conditions would not have been repeated in the fate of others. We, as representatives of Azerbaijan, are talking about this not only now after the events. We had taken our timely step. In the very early 2000s, we talked about it with all our might and passion. In fact, speaking of our own problems, we sounded the alarm about the approaching disasters. When we raised these questions 2 decades ago, we had in mind not only ourselves, our own tragedies of occupation and exile. We also made it clear that if action was not taken in time, the disaster would move towards you, and 1 million refugees and displaced persons would turn into tens of millions. The necessary, decisive steps were not taken in time, including also by the Council of Europe. The outcome is a shaky Europe and the world we now live in, the tense reality we now find ourselves in, the bitter reality of war, millions of refugees, and economic problems. We must get rid of the habit of looking after the departing train. Instead of commenting on what is happening today, we need to think about where all this will lead, and we must take urgent action in advance to prevent deeper crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Now I call in the debate Mr. Armen Gevorgian from Armenia. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. President, yesterday on April 24, Armenians all around the world and many other nations were commemorating the Armenian genocide, a crime against humanity that 2 members of the Council of Europe, Turkey and Azerbaijan, are denying. The International Association of the Genocide Scholars calls denial a last stage of the same crime of genocide. There is something else that in our days Azerbaijan, supported by Turkey, denies too: the right of Armenians to live in their historical homeland. After the 44-day war unleashed by Azerbaijan in fall 2020, the Armenian people in the Republic of Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, has faced a dilemma: continue pursuing their path of independent development and life in dignity, preserving their national identity, or repeat the dire destiny of our compatriots that once lived in what now is part of Azerbaijan and a region by name of Nakhichevan. In the course of 70 years as a part of Soviet Azerbaijan, the entire Armenian population of Nakhichevan has completely disappeared. Armenian cultural and religious heritage in Nakhichevan have been completely demolished. Now Azerbaijan is trying to force the Armenian of Artsakh to have the same destiny. I call the Council of Europe to send a clear and strong signal to all parties of the Karabakh conflict that the international community will continue to support 3 main principles for the conflict resolution defined by OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship. One of these principles, namely non-use of force or the threat of force, has been violated by Azerbaijan many times and continues to be violated these days. That is why The international community cannot demand the Armenian people of Artsakh to live under the rule of Azerbaijan, that has been carrying out a state policy of ethnic cleansing of Armenians, a state that has unleashed 3 large-scale wars against them in 3 decades, a state that is trying to rewrite the history of the region in order to deny the mere existence of Armenian heritage and culture, and finally, a state that is not shy to publicly declare territorial ambitions against the Republic of Armenia too. Mr. President, I believe that peace in our region does not have any alternative. For long and sustainable peace, solutions are needed that must be mutually acceptable. The important challenge for our organization is to limit Azerbaijani efforts to secure the silent consent of Europe in its business of denying the right of people of Artsakh to self-determination in exchange of gas and oil. And finally, Mr. President, it was shocking to see that the person who was the president of this assembly for 2 years, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of a member state, Çavuşoğlu, communicates the Armenian with the gestures of a Turkish nationalist terrorist organization. Such behavior should be unacceptable and condemned by Council of Europe. And I call to my colleagues from Turkey with the same efforts to recognize the genocide of Armenians. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Mr. George Fawkes from the United Kingdom. George, you have the floor.
Well, Mr. President, that was a very impressive, albeit novel, speech by Ian Little-Granger on the progress report of the Bureau. Now, although I agree with a lot of what he said, I'm going to leave that now, and we've got a couple more debates on the Russian intervention, one of which I hope to participate in.
And I'm certainly not going to enter into the debate between Armenia and Azerbaijan, not tonight anyway. I want to raise just 2 rather more mundane issues. Day after day, night after night, along with all of us here, I spend a lot of time discussing reports, well-written reports, detailed amendments, voting on them, and we really do spend a lot of time. We put a lot of effort into it.
What I wonder sometimes is these reports then go to the Council of Ministers, Committee of Ministers. Then what happens to them? What do we do to press them with national governments, the only
people who can really take some action on that?
And then the second point I want to raise is the image,
the profile of the Council of Europe.
Now in the United Kingdom, I've been encouraging even more
information and understanding of the Council of Europe, particularly that we're no longer members, sadly, no longer members of the European Union.
But I could go into a bar or a cafe in Edinburgh, and I don't think I'd bump into anyone who knew about the Council of Europe.
Now, I understand that the Bureau has a particular role. I thought I had a loud voice. I thought the Bureau had a particular role to pursue and to promote the work that we do, and to make sure it's followed up, and to make sure our profile is raised. And so my question to Ian Little-Granger is, what are you and the Bureau doing to increase the knowledge and understanding of the work of the Council of Europe, and particularly of the Parliamentary Assembly? And what are you doing to make sure that the resolutions that we spend so much time and effort on are picked up and acted upon? Otherwise, we might feel that we could be wasting some of our time here.
Thank you, George. There is a point of order again, but we are not going to continue the same debate, so you have 30 seconds to make your point, Ahmed.
Sure, Mr. President. Indeed, I supposed also that we will proceed based on the introduction presentation by Mr. Granger, as we did in Bureau. But again, this session was hijacked by Armenian colleagues. It turned to a discussion.
Sorry, Ahmed. Sorry.
I blame them.
Shut down. Shut up. Shut up. There is no point. there is a point of... Sit down, relax. Listen, relax. Mr. Yildiz has the floor for a point of order, not for a debate, because then you should have been on the list. So make your point of order, and that's it. And it doesn't help if you all stand up, you won't get the floor. Mr. Yildiz, 30 seconds. Point of order. If you don't have, then we continue the debate.
Substantial issue, Mr. Granger made introduction. I blame Armenian colleagues because they criticized unfairly a deep political national movement in Turkey, unfairly. And Minister Çavuşoğlu, President of this Assembly, former one, he is doing his job. But unfortunately, also in Latin America, Armenian radicals hijacked the meeting also, that he reacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Rubinian, you have 30 seconds for your point of order. For your point of order. And it does not help if everybody stands up. It's not very convincing. Mr. Rubinian.
Thank you. Mr. President, I have a problem with how you deal with this session. You gave 2 points of order to two of our Turkish colleagues who spoke no words about the point of order. This is a problem. Secondly, you are not in a position to tell anyone in this hemicycle to shut up. Thirdly, I want to ask you, Mr. President, is any kind of sign, aggressive nationalist sign, allowed in this hemicycle or not? If your answer is not, please make sure those signs are not used here. And thirdly, please continue dealing with the points of order as they are. And don't allow our colleagues to make statements which are not dealing with the order. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have Mr. Vardanian, who also asked for a point of order. 30 seconds, Mr. Vardanian, for a point of order, please.
No, okay. Mr. Chairman, first of all, dignity is the basis of human rights, and nobody can offend anybody sitting here. And the very words "shut up" is offensive. Sorry for saying this. The second, yes, points of order is only for the procedure, but not for substance. The third, I would like to request Mr. Leader Granger to answer a question, whether it is normal that former president of this assembly using the signs of radical organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we are going to continue our debate, and I will ask the leaders of the delegation of Azerbaijan and Armenia to meet me during the week to discuss this way of debate. Next on the debate will be Mr. Kamal Yafarov from Azerbaijan. You have the floor, sir.
Chers collègues, je voudrais vous informer des rencontres trilatérales entre l'Azerbaïdjan et l'Arménie, initiées par le président du Conseil de l'Union européenne, M. Charles Michel. Les résultats des deux réunions de Bruxelles peuvent être considérés comme positifs dans l'ensemble. La première bonne nouvelle est que l'Union européenne accepte les réalités de l'après-conflit. On ne trouve pas les mots au Karabakh et conflit dans le communiqué final. C'est naturel car il n'y a plus de conflit est résolu. L'Union européenne travaille actuellement à la normalisation des relations azerbaïdjanaises et arméniennes. Nous l'apprécions également. La deuxième nouvelle importante est qu'un accord a été trouvé sur la délimitation des frontières et la création de groupes de travail chargés d'élaborer un accord de paix. La troisième et peut-être la plus importante est que l'Arménie accepte également les réalités de l'après-conflit. L'Arménie accepte 5 principes présentés par l'Azerbaïdjan. Nous considérons que ces commentaires sont positifs. Cependant, l'Arménie doit prouver son sérieux à la table des négociations. Dans le même temps, l'Arménie doit prendre au sérieux son engagement en matière de communication régionale et prendre des mesures pratiques. Elle doit avoir un comportement sincère. Pourquoi je dis cela? Parce que 80 de plaintes de mines fournies par l'Azerbaïdjan, par l'Arménie à l'Azerbaïdjan, sont faux. Nous comprenons que l'Arménie a fait cela afin de créer une image artificielle devant la communauté internationale. 21 personnes auraient pu être tuées si les habitants qui ont récemment visité les maisons des Durturites du village de Günashli dans les régions Kalbajar n'avaient pas été avertis à temps. Il a été établi que ces mines ont été enterrées par des Arméniens entre le 10 et le 25 novembre. Nous voulons que l'APC ne reste pas silencieuse sur les problèmes des mines. Finally, my regard to this symbol, you should also know that, maybe you can Google as well, Barack Obama even did that, and this is very old totem, belong to Turkish people, and there is nothing wrong with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before continuing the debate, the moment that I said, shut up, that was not correct. I wanted to say, be silent, because it's the president who gives you the floor and you cannot take the floor. So excuse my English language in that respect, but we stick to the rule that the president decides who is getting the floor and who is not getting the floor. Next on the list of speakers is Mr. Alexei Goncharenko from the Ukraine. He's online, I think. No, he's not with us. Okay. Then the next speaker will be Madam Nigar Arpadaray from Azerbaijan. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I am from Azerbaijan. For 30 years, we lived through the occupation, ethnic cleansing, aggression by another member state of Council of Europe, Armenia. All this while Europe and its institutes watched and did nothing. But I don't want to talk about that now. I want to talk about peace. Despite obvious military upper hand in regards to Armenia and Azerbaijani standout, Azerbaijan is willing to achieve fair and lasting peace settlement based on principles of international law. Such peace would bring stability and prosperity not only to the countries concerned, but to the entire region of Southeastern Europe. It would mean new economic and transit opportunities. It would mean a safer Europe for all. And I am glad to see that there are signs that Europe seems to support it too. The recent meeting of President of Azerbaijan, PM of Armenia, and President of the European Council in Brussels, and the rhetoric and atmosphere around it is a good sign. Dear colleagues, Azerbaijan placed on the table 5 straightforward and simple principles as basis for the peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Among others, these include mutual recognition of territorial integrity, as well as mutual confirmation of the absence of territorial claims against each other. Armenia's leadership, Prime Minister Pashinyan, flirts with this idea, but we are still to see it materializing into a solid document. The reasons for such position is clear to me. Armenian constitution is based on territorial claims to neighbors. Modern Armenian political system is entangled in the trap of the myth of ethnic supremacy and expansionism. It is based on the dream to recreate some ancient Armenian empire from sea to sea and avenge for all kinds of old grievances. But it is way to nowhere. Year and a half passed since the signing of the trilateral statement ending hostilities between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But unfortunately, even now, the remnants of military Armenian groups continue to hide in Karabakh. Why are they there? Why Armenia didn't move its military from our land? If Armenia is sincere about the peace, there is a very obvious way to show it. Stop direct and indirect support to secessionist and separatist groups on the territory of Azerbaijan. Make a clear statement about that. We in Azerbaijan are ready for peace. And I ask, is Armenia ready for it? The time has come to decide. And Europe this time must be proactive for the sake of its own future. Dear colleagues, and again and again, regarding the Armenian rhetoric, regarding coming back to genocide issue, Turkish has said many times that they are ready to open all documents. They want to investigate. Why Armenians would not do that? Why they are making loud statements and then hiding? Come on, let's open. And again, in our case also, if you want a peace deal, come to direct talks with us and let's sign this peace deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. The last speaker on our list is Piero Fassino from Italy. Piero, you have the floor.
Chiedo scusa e prenderò proprio pochi secondi, perché io non credo che si faranno molti passi in avanti se ogni sessione della nostra Assemblea parlamentare abbiamo un dibattito di questo tipo, in cui i rappresentanti dell'Armenia si alzano e rimproverano e recriminano nei confronti dell'Azerbaigian e viceversa i rappresentanti dell'Azerbaigian fanno lo stesso. Non si fa un passo in avanti così. Continueremo in questa recriminazione reciproca. Allora io credo che il Consiglio d'Europa, che è una sede nella quale bisogna favorire dialogo, riconciliazione e soluzione dei problemi, debba agire per favorire il superamento di questa contrapposizione. Siccome il Comitato Monitoraggio ha al suo seno una sottocommissione per dirimere i conflitti tra gli Stati membri, io propongo che questo Comitato metta all'ordine del giorno l'avvio di un'attività di intermediazione per il dialogo tra la delegazione azera e la delegazione armena. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Piero, for this proposal. We will come back to that proposal. And now the list of speakers has ended, and I give the floor to Mr. Little Granger to reply. You have 3 minutes, Ian.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President. I thought it was my job to tell you to be quiet. I'm quite shocked that somebody's stealing my thunder, but actually, in the words of English, as you know, English is a very broad language. And you were quite right to be able to use those words as many other words you could use, so don't worry about it. Can I just thank Lithuanians, our Hungarian colleague and our Ukrainian colleague for bringing forward the report on Russia and the way Russia has acted and the way that aggression has no place, and that for the refugees and for the people that are displaced and the people that are suffering every single day, that we continue to watch this war escalate. My Hungarian colleague mentioned the Hungarian elections, many congratulations. And I think a lot of people were very pleased to see that they went well, and I believe in Serbia they did as well. I would say to George gently, because you have no right to reply, I understand that. It wasn't a case of I told you so, it was a case I thought it was pretty already obvious that what was going to happen with the Russians. And unfortunately, we learn by the lessons of history. History does tend to repeat itself, not always for the better, and I'm sorry about that. On Armenia and Azerbaijan, I have both countries in my group. I understand the sensibilities and the enormous emotion this figures. In many of the things I talked about Russia, in fact, are encompassed in that. And I would urge all sides, they need to sit down. I hope, Tina, you can broker an understanding when you meet them in your office and to get this understanding across. George, Lord Fuchs, you're quite right, George, to say it's a novel progress report. But progress is in the eyes of the beholder, I would suggest, and in my eyes, that this is the most important thing that we are going to face, certainly probably in the next 10 years, this situation in the Ukraine. Because by sorting this out will set the tone for democracy, not just for Ukraine and Russia, for all of us. Because the norms have disappeared. I never thought Sweden and Finland would ask to join NATO. I never thought I'd see Germany rearming the way it is. I didn't think I'd see countries changing the way they look at the world. I didn't see, for instance, America taking this position in the way it has. And I think there's so much has changed. And you're right, George, this is a novel approach, but I think novel times need novel approaches. But you made a very good point, George, is these reports, we do hundreds of the damn things. I think you did one on football recently, George. And where do they go to? Not just the pubs in Edinburgh, nobody knows the Council of Europe. In the House of Commons, nobody knows the Council of Europe. Never mind going out to the pubs. And that is the problem. How do we get the reports out there? There is no easy answer. I think we do too many reports. I think our scattergun approach means that they are diluted. I think we need to focus much more on what really matters to us. And I think that perhaps that all of us perhaps take the reports. There are so many that we can't be bothered to read them. They're quite long. And dare I say, it's slightly boring, and I've done some myself. But on that note, Mr. Speaker, I present the progress report to the plenary session, and I wish you good luck for the rest of the week, sir.
Thank you very much, Ian, for your presentation and your reply. The Bureau has proposed a number of references to committees for ratification by the Assembly, and they are set out in document 15503 and addendum 1. Is there any objection to the proposed references to committees? I don't see any, so they are approved. I now propose that the other decisions in the progress report in document 15503 and addendum 1 and 2 be ratified. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Then we now interrupt the debate for a moment to change the presidency.
The next item of business at this sitting is the debate on the report that is entitled "For an Assessment of the Means and Provisions to Combat Children's Exposure to Pornographic Content." It's document 15494, and it's presented by Mr. Dimitri Hubron on behalf of the Committee of Social Affairs, Health and Sustainable Development. We shall hear an opinion from Mr. Stefan Schenak on behalf of the Committee on Culture, Science, Education and Media, which is document 15505. This sitting will conclude at 7:30, so I propose to interrupt the list of speakers at about 7:15 to allow time for the replies and the vote on the amendments and the draft resolution and draft recommendation. The rapporteur has 7 minutes to present the report, and then we'll have a further 3 minutes to reply to the debate at the end. Monsieur Hubron, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues. Tout d'abord, sachez que c'est une immense fierté pour moi de m'exprimer devant vous aujourd'hui, devant cette institution si prestigieuse, pour vous exposer le fruit de nombreux mois de travaux relatifs à une évaluation des moyens et des dispositifs pour lutter contre l'exposition des enfants au contenu pornographique. Je profite de mon allocution pour remercier les nombreux collègues et experts pour leurs avis et conseils, les membres de la Commission des questions sociales de la PCE de Croatie, de France, de Suède, du Royaume-Uni pour leurs contributions écrites, M. John Kerr, expert en matière de sûreté et de sécurité sur Internet, Madame Julie Milleville-Dechaine, sénatrice canadienne, M. Corby, directeur exécutif de l'Age Verification Providers Association, qui ont fait part de leurs réflexions sur ce sujet. Ou encore la contribution écrite fournie par MinGeek, qui a facilité l'identification des défis dans ce domaine sous l'angle des fournisseurs de contenu réservés aux adultes. Je tenais aussi bien sûr à remercier en particulier Madame Wilia Pererva, administratrice de notre Assemblée, pour son travail, pour ses conseils, sa disponibilité et bien sûr son soutien tout au long de l'élaboration de ce rapport. En premier lieu, je tenais à resituer le contexte dans lequel ce rapport fut commandé. Il a été proposé de renforcer la voie tracée par celle de la Convention du Conseil de l'Europe sur la protection des enfants contre l'exploitation et les abus sexuels, dite Convention de Lanzarote. Nous sommes partis du constat que l'Assemblée parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe devait produire une documentation et des ressources plus étoffées relatives aux moyens et dispositifs visant à renforcer la protection des mineurs à l'exposition de la pornographie. Je tiens à vous préciser que le premier projet de proposition de résolution sur ce sujet fut rédigé en fin d'année 2019, c'est-à-dire à un moment où la Covid-19 ne se résumait qu'à de simples brèves journalistiques des correspondants en Chine. Dans ce contexte de la pandémie, le temps d'écran a augmenté, l'encadrement a diminué et beaucoup d'enfants ont fini par accéder à des contenus sexuellement explicites et à les partager. Le site web Pornhub a fait état d'une augmentation d'environ 24% en 2020 du nombre de visionnages de contenus pornographiques. Si la plupart des personnes qui regardent ces contenus sont bien sûr des adultes, il y a aussi des enfants. L'âge moyen de la première exposition à des contenus de ce type étant de 11 ans, les parents sont de plus en plus inquiets et ont besoin de recommandations claires et concrètes. Comme pour de nombreux autres fléaux sociaux, la pandémie nous a permis de remettre en lumière ce phénomène. Dans ce contexte, certains États membres du Conseil de l'Europe ont voulu réformer les textes légaux qui régissent leur interaction avec les plateformes numériques et les réseaux sociaux. Ainsi, ils ont adopté des législations imposant aux réseaux sociaux d'avoir un représentant sur le sol national et d'obéir aux tribunaux demandant le retrait des contenus sous 48 heures, sous peine d'amende. Ils ont également prévu l'interdiction d'avoir des revenus publicitaires ou encore de subir une forte réduction de sa bande passante. Cependant, la quasi-totalité des géants des réseaux sociaux ont refusé de se plier à ces mesures, considérant qu'elles pouvaient ouvrir la voie à des demandes de censure. En définitive, il était apparu que toute disposition légale sur ce sujet pourrait être balayée au motif d'une atteinte à la liberté d'expression à terme. Sur ce dernier point, la France a d'ailleurs vu l'une de ses lois visant à lutter contre la haine sur Internet censurée par son Conseil constitutionnel. Mes chers collègues, vous l'aurez compris, dans ce contexte singulièrement compliqué, incertain et pesant, que nous avons élaboré ce rapport. Ce dernier a permis de conforter deux éléments fondamentaux, connus de tous, mais qu'il est pourtant nécessaire de rappeler. D'une part, l'accès aisé et anonyme au contenu pornographique constitue les causes profondes de notre problématique. D'autre part, il n'est pas exagéré de dire qu'un enfant peut être détruit par l'exposition à ces contenus pornographiques de plus en plus violents. Ce fléau met en péril son bien-être, son rapport à la société, ses interactions avec les femmes et les hommes, voire même sa sexualité. C'est une lente mutilation psychique. Ce rapport a permis de détailler les différents moyens et dispositifs existants pour lutter contre l'exposition de ces enfants au contenu pornographique. Tout d'abord, nous pouvons nous appuyer sur les logiciels de contrôle parental et de blocage sur les ordinateurs. Il était essentiel de faciliter la tâche des parents eux-mêmes et des personnes en charge des enfants pour contrôler les activités en ligne de leurs enfants. Dans cette logique, la France a promulgué une loi visant à renforcer le contrôle parental sur les moyens d'accès à Internet. Elle prévoit l'obligation pour les fabricants d'appareils connectés d'installer un logiciel de contrôle parental par défaut dès la première mise à jour. La loi introduit des sanctions en cas de non-respect de cette obligation, prévoit des listes noires et blanches de sites web ou d'applications et vise à garantir une norme minimale commune à tous les fabricants. L'État doit aussi assumer sa responsabilité et prendre des mesures plus fermes, telles que la mise en place d'un système effectif de vérification de l'âge. Il existe plusieurs lois et les outils technologiques pour contraindre un utilisateur à justifier de son âge pour accéder à certains contenus. Nous pouvons citer la méthode de l'identification visuelle par une carte, une pièce d'identité scannée et authentifiée, le service de l'estimation de l'âge grâce à l'intelligence artificielle, ou encore la création d'un portefeuille d'identité numérique réutilisable. En 2020, le Parlement français a adopté une loi instaurant l'introduction d'un système national de vérification de l'âge pour les sites pornographiques. La loi en question laisse au site la liberté de décider de la manière de procéder à cette vérification, et l'une des mesures les plus prisées semble être de demander aux utilisateurs de saisir un numéro de carte de crédit. Certes, les personnes concernées ont coutume de garder l'anonymat et estiment que leur navigation sur des sites pour adultes est un sujet extrêmement sensible. Il est donc essentiel de veiller à ce que les outils de vérification soient créés de manière à garantir un niveau maximal de protection de la vie privée, tout en permettant une action efficace contre les activités criminelles. Enfin, le rapport rappelle le rôle fondamental de l'éducation et de la sensibilisation au sein des écoles. Les professionnels de l'éducation devraient recevoir une formation appropriée pour qu'une communication ouverte puisse s'instaurer avec les enfants, sur la base des principes de respect de la dignité humaine, de l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes, et en faisant appel à l'esprit critique. Nous devrions être confiants dans le fait que les jeunes, même à un âge précoce, peuvent réfléchir aux messages véhiculés par les contenus à caractère sexuel et comprendre les différences entre les relations dans la vie réelle et la fiction de la pornographie. Par ailleurs, l'industrie pornographique elle-même est consciente de la problématique et est prête à travailler avec nous. Elle a d'ailleurs contribué dans ce rapport. S'agissant des préconisations, je propose également la création d'un partenariat avec les organes pertinents de l'ONU, comme l'UNICEF et le représentant spécial du secrétaire général chargé de la question de la violence contre les enfants. Un tel partenariat pourrait rassembler les plateformes et pouvoirs publics, ainsi que des entreprises numériques et des prestataires à contenu pour adultes. Le but est d'élaborer une action globale, coordonnée, pérenne et à un coût abordable. Vous l'aurez compris, mes chers collègues, Beaucoup de points ont été abordés dans ce rapport pour apporter des solutions concrètes. Et je conclurai cette prise de parole peut-être par une citation d'un homme politique français, Pierre Mauroy, qui disait qu'à force de croire obstinément à ses rêves, on finit par imposer sa réalité. Alors mes chers collègues, soyons dès ce soir de grands rêveurs obstinés.
Thank you, Monsieur Hubron. I now call on Mr. Schenner, who is the rapporteur of the Committee on Culture, Science, Education and Media, to present the committee's opinion, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, first let me really express my congratulations to Mr. Hubron and to the whole Social Committee for this excellent report, which is very important and whose analysis and recommendation I fully support. And sometimes it is good if you are longer time in an institution like Council of Europe. So I remember a few years back, and you will see I asked for the floor at that time, our assembly adopted a resolution on violence in and through the media, discussing the impact of media violence, including sexual violence, on the behavior of individuals, in particular children, who have increasingly easier access to pornographic content in an often unregulated internet environment. The Culture Committee adopted unanimously 2 amendments I made, and the Social Committee also adopted those 2 amendments today unanimously, and I say thank you to the rapporteur that he agreed into the adoption of those amendments. In those, for me, it was the view to drawing attention to sexual violence on the internet, video games, social media platforms, as well as virtual environments which remain largely unregulated. This is the amendment number 1. The committee also draws your attention to virtual reality environments, such as the metaverse, where users can interact only online in a 3-dimensional, multisensory way that can affect the minds and bodies of children through potentially violent and pornographic content and sounds. Unweighted images and contexts can become even more intrusive and difficult for parents to control. We want to encourage the development of anonymous complaint and reporting mechanism, also complemented by a code of conduct of safe internet programs and of possible forms of content moderation. The Culture Committee intends to further investigate the risks, challenges and human rights implications of emerging technologies such as virtual reality, augmented reality and immersive technology. We would like to associate the Social Committee in this endeavor with a special focus on the physical and psychological aspects of immersive technology on children and youth. Thanks again for this report, and I hope that this report will find a large majority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shenak. Now, in this debate, I move to speakers on behalf of political groups, and the first of those is the EPP and Monsieur Alain Milon. Vous avez la parole, Monsieur.
Président, mes chers collègues, je tiens tout d'abord à remercier notre collègue Dimitri Hubron pour ce travail qui met en lumière les dangers d'exposition des enfants au contenu pornographique. Du fait de l'essor des technologies de l'information et de la communication, nos enfants sont exposés au contenu pornographique beaucoup plus tôt en âge et beaucoup plus facilement que par le passé. Cette exposition n'est pas sans incidence sur leur développement psychique et physique. S'il est encore trop tôt pour dresser un bilan complet de cette évolution, de nombreuses études et témoignages attestent de la nocivité pour nos enfants de l'exposition à ces contenus. Les études s'accordent pour dire que cette exposition précoce a des conséquences neuropsychiatriques et qu'elle peut en particulier entraîner une addiction. Elle peut également conduire à des troubles du comportement sexuel caractérisés par des fantasmes sexuels obsessionnels excessifs pouvant générer une souffrance et en conséquence, par la suite, une dépression. Des dysfonctions érectiles ont également été associées à l'exposition précoce au contenu pornographique. Enfin, on ne mesure pas encore totalement l'impact psychique de ces images sur les enfants et les troubles du comportement qu'ils induisent. À ce sujet, les personnes exposées évoquent des cauchemars et des répercussions négatives sur leurs relations sentimentales futures. Nous ne pouvons donc pas rester inactifs face à ce sujet. Il est de notre devoir de veiller au bien-être de nos enfants et en tant que parlementaires, nous devons contraindre les sites proposant des contenus pornographiques à vérifier l'âge de leurs utilisateurs. Nous partageons donc le souhait du rapporteur de mettre en place un processus de certification adapté. Nous partageons l'idée de rendre obligatoire la conformité aux exigences de vérification de l'âge et de traiter le problème des moteurs de recherche qui mettent en avant des sites non conformes et d'envisager la mise en place d'une liste noire d'URL pour les domaines qui enfreigneraient la loi. Nous soutenons également le recours au logiciel de contrôle parental et de blocage de contenu. Cela nous paraît devoir être encouragé. Il appartient aux parents de veiller à ce que les équipements utilisés par leurs enfants soient équipés de ce type de logiciels qui devront être paramétrés et activés. En France, le rapporteur l'a dit, à l'initiative des parlementaires, nous venons d'adopter une loi pour renforcer le contrôle parental sur les moyens d'accès à Internet. Elle prévoit l'obligation pour les fabricants d'appareils connectés d'installer un logiciel de contrôle parental qui pourra être activé gratuitement. Cela me paraît être une solution intéressante. Enfin, les conventions internationales en vigueur aujourd'hui sur la protection de l'enfance ne ciblent pas particulièrement l'exposition au contenu pornographique. Dès lors, nous pensons que le Conseil de l'Europe devrait se saisir de cette question et élaborer des lignes directrices.
Merci, Monsieur Milon. And now we move to the ECDA group, and I call Lord Russell.
I would like to start by thanking Monsieur Hubron very much for a very timely and comprehensive report. This is a global problem. It affects us all, every nation, but it is global. And the only way we can tackle this is by tackling it globally as well as nationally. To prioritize either over the other will not and does not work. The online world has no borders. It recognizes no borders. It respects no borders. What it does respect is profitability. While welcoming this report, I do feel it's important to acknowledge and use the best practice approaches that have already been developed around the world. In particular, first and foremost, what I'm holding is the gold standard. The gold standard was developed by the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. In 2021, it produced General Comment number 25 on children's rights in relation to the digital environment. It largely says it all, with very clear views and guidelines for countries, which it refers to as states parties, to develop comprehensive policies, laws and protocols to protect children. I urge all parliamentarians and policymakers to study it carefully. Otherwise, we will be in danger yet again of reinventing the wheel. Secondly, the EU is doing some good work. The Digital Services Act, hopefully, will include children's safety by design. The new Artificial Intelligence Act, hopefully, will ban all online systems which exploit vulnerabilities. In the United States of America, the federal government is looking at child online privacy acts in a variety of forms, but most interestingly, in California, where, of course, so much technology emanates, a new children's online code was voted through unanimously in the California legislature. And to find something that both Republicans and Democrats agree on in the United States is unusual, to put it mildly. And many of the California technology companies themselves are getting on board. But we are always in danger of being behind the curve. Monsieur Chenac mentioned the metaverse. The metaverse, of course, is partly why Mr. Zuckerberg renamed Facebook Meta. This is what he's betting the future on. A story in today's Daily Mail in the United Kingdom refers to a documentary which will be shown on Channel 4 television shortly, and it is about the metaverse. A reporter found grooming, sexual material, racist insults, and rape threats all over the metaverse. So please go back to your countries, ask your government to act with speed, with determination, and above all, to work globally and nationally. And above all, and I'm thinking of my colleague Baroness Doreen Massey, who can't be here in person, listen to your children. They want protection, they know what they're talking about, and they usually know far more than we do.
Thank you, Lord Russell. And now for ALDE, I ask Fiona O'Loughlin to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I firstly would like to thank the Rapporteur for his absolutely excellent work, for the detail that he has gone into, and for the very strong recommendations that he has made. There is absolutely no doubt that children are spending a considerable amount of time on the internet, and many may be exposed to content that's simply not suitable for them to see, such as pornographic material, which initially can be very extremely damaging and traumatizing for them to see. But then there is the danger of them normalizing that. And some people are simply unaware of what lies on the internet and how easy it is for children to come across mature content without meaning to. And this can have an impact on them right throughout their lives. It is a reality that pornography is now the most prominent sexuality educator for many young people. And that's quite shocking to hear. Most young people discover porn well before they encounter sex, perhaps even before they have had a kiss. We know from research that has been done that 50% of boys have seen porn before the age of 13, and 50% of girls have seen porn before the age of 15. Shockingly, 30% of porn websites show non-consensual sexual acts, and we have to ask what message that is giving out to our young people. So I'm going to make just a few statements that are short, simple statements, but they really give us the nub of the issue. Porn can shape sexual tastes and expectations. Porn bodies are not normal bodies. Porn sex is not safe sex. Porn is a performance. It misrepresents pleasure. And they're simple statements, but there's a lot of weight and a lot of truth in those, and a lot of the reasoning why we absolutely need to do something. And we all have a role. Legislators have a very strong role. Teachers have a very strong role. Parents have the most important role of all. We need collectively to work to make sure that strategies are put in place to combat exposure to pornography, and these strategies need to be comprehensive and they need to be coherent. And the main conclusion of the report, and again I think we have to say it, that we cannot leave the answer to just a group of concerned individuals and associations. It needs to become priority for society as a whole, with media acting responsibility and with all of our governments acting accountably to do what they can to address this really huge concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. And now, on behalf of the UEL, I call on Laura Castell.
Thank you, Chair. Dear all, on behalf of the WELL Group, I want to start by thanking the rapporteur for the efforts Mr. Dimitriou Brom has put into researching this report, this topic, and writing this highly relevant report. A report that deals with a controversial and complex topic, but is of utmost importance to be debated today. For the rights of the children, but also as the pornography industry is the one directly benefited from exposure from an early age. The literature on the subject is characterized by a tension between youth rights to sexual expression and privacy and child protection. But what is the reality is that children's exposure to pornographic content is harmful for their personal development. This type of content is a kind of sexual abuse because a child cannot be considered as able to consent to engage in online child sexual exploitation. Often, as the rapporteur stressed, they stumble upon the pornographic content on digital devices, even without actively looking for it. This kind of pornography prospectively harms the psychological health of the society and increases risk of gender stereotyping and violence against women and undermines the human dignity and physical integrity. More negative aspects of exposure to pornography appears to affect young people's sexual attitudes, expectations, and beliefs. This kind of pornography normalizes abuses and violence against human beings and can negatively affect the picture of children about sexuality. Group raping often appears in films produced by this industry, and that impact on the children exposed. The liberalized capitalist market of the pornographic industry commercializes human beings and commercializes unhealthy relationships. The current scale of children's exposure to pornography calls on measures that have been clearly identified in this report. Therefore, urgent need to ensure safety of children is needed by providing parents and social actors the relevant information. On one hand, rights of children to adequate standard of mental health according to United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Children. On the other, sexuality and education is important as part of the development of the child. Also, relevant legislation for prohibition of such content in certain age is needed, as well as penalty for non-compliances by the industry and the providers. We should urge national parliaments to adopt a specific, comprehensive and harmonized legal frameworks to introduce national online child sexual exploitation and abuse laws. I finish. It is time also for IT industry to start being committed in designing technical solutions that are user-friendly and provide effective safety controls against pornographic content availability to children. Thank you again to the rapporteur.
Thank you very much indeed. And just before I move to the last of our political speakers, can I remind everyone that unless they're speaking, they are supposed to be wearing the mask. So can those that are just sitting, listening to this debate, please put their masks on. Thank you very much indeed. And now, lastly, I call Tonia Antoniazzi on behalf of the Socialist Group.
Chair, and I warmly welcome the report from the committee and the rapporteur, Mr. Dimitri Hubron. For 20 years, I was a school teacher, a secondary school teacher, and I have been increasingly concerned about the influence of online pornography on society, but especially on children and young people. And the Assembly is right to be alarmed at the unprecedented exposure of children to pornography in society. We must all be alarmed because today's mainstream internet porn is free, hardcore and harming young people and children. This report covers the main points, but it could be sharper, it could be more direct, because the horrific situation we find ourselves in, it's the Wild West online, and for too long, the victims are children. Studies have shown that the first age of viewing internet pornography is between 11 and 14, but the harsh reality is that there is an even younger age that it is targeted at, less than 10 years of age. And most young people today access porn on mobile phones through social media sites that are targeted to teenagers and free internet porn sites. Porn sites get more visitors each month than Netflix, Amazon and Twitter combined. Research has found that young people are increasingly exposed to porn, either intentionally or by accident, through Snapchat and Instagram, which are becoming gateways to increased hardcore porn use among adolescents. And look, let's not mince our words here. 90% of pornography content can be categorised as sexual or physical abuse. As Lord Simon Russell has already mentioned, the Channel 4 programme Dispatches has exposed the metaverse and the issues around virtual reality and the sexual and racist abuse that is online there. So porn is racist, it's ableist, it fetishises body size and shape. Porn supports the objectification and sexualisation of women and children. And the way that porn addiction works drives the user to more extreme content, including sexual images and videos of children, which means that there is a growing market for sexual images of videos of children. Porn makes children confused about sexual orientation and leads to dysphoria and eating disorders. And make no bones about it, it is education that we need. We need to tell children that why the production of porn is as important for them to understand that porn is made through this exploitation. Now, I have so much more to say, but the Online Harms Bill gives some strong powers to Ofcom, but it could go further in the United Kingdom. We have a problem of breadcrumbing. Now, this is where abusers organise in plain sight, signposting illegal content to each other in a way that doesn't meet the criminal standards. So steps must be taken across Europe, across the world, to prevent child abuse at the earliest possible opportunity. But thank you for your report.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the speakers on behalf of political groups. Now we move to the main speakers list, and I start with Marguerite Boer.
Thank you, President. In addressing this report, resolution and recommendation, I'd like to commend the rapporteur for its comprehensive assessment of this important topic. The technological measures presented in the resolution, such as parental controls, ad blocking and age verification tools, are relevant and have the potential to address the issues of children's exposure to pornographic content rather quickly. For a more structural and long-term solution, I would like to stress the importance of education. This is already included in the resolution, which states that comprehensive sexuality and relationships education in schools should be strengthened. Pornography should not be the first and surely not be the only way in which children learn about sex. In current times, we see trends in many countries moving away from sexuality education. Examples are the LGBT-free zone resolutions in Poland, in which local government units pledge to block, among other things, sexuality education in schools according to the World Health Organization standards. This is done with a reference to parental rights and the freedom of parents to educate kids within their own worldview. However, as stated in Mr. Hubron's resolution, educating children about sexuality in a comprehensive way is a parent's duty, as well as the state's. And rather than endangering or corrupting children, as is often feared by those that oppose sexuality education, it will ensure children's age-appropriate and safe introduction into topics that will eventually spark their interest anyway. In this manner, it is an essential step to protect children against the impact of unwanted exposure to pornographic content. A second example of regression in sexuality education is that of the United States, in which Florida's recent Don't Say Gay bill has banned teaching about sexual orientation or gender identity to young children. With a view to this, I'd like to stress that the comprehensive sexuality education proposed in the resolution should always include education about sexual orientation and gender identity as well. I would like to thank the rapporteur for these proposals, and I'm confident that implementation of the measure proposed will help address the issue of children's exposure to pornographic content. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Madame Trastur-Isna. She should be online. I'm not sure whether she is. Well, maybe we'll come back to her if she comes online. Now I call Monica Bartos.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the floor. First of all, congratulations to the rapporteur. In this report, he undertook to solve a particularly important and serious problem. Children's exposure to pornographic content has been a concern in the past, but has risen sharply due to confinement and increased virtual life due to the coronavirus epidemic. Access to digital services affects more than 60% of European Union's population, and there are a lot of children among the users. According to a 2020 study, 90% of 4-6-year-olds use the internet and spend 2-3 hours on smart devices a day. Perhaps I do not even have to say how much emphasis Hungary places on protecting children from content that could be harmful to their mental, spiritual, moral, or physical development. Of course, we support all initiatives that help and protect the healthy development of our children. The solution is not easy, as we need to regulate an ever-changing environment. Therefore, as the report points out, there is a need for wide-ranging cooperation. To bring together a wide range of national and international regulators, authorities, specialist services and experts, and of course market players. And users can't be left out either, neither children nor parents and families. In addition to technical solutions and, for example, the use of filtering softwares, it is important to focus on other tools. Emphasis on awareness and training is essential. It is important to constantly monitor regulations and adapt to change. Market players and service providers need to be addressed and made interested in success. Research shows that parents are the primary help for children when exposed to pornographic content. Turning to peers is less common, and turning to teachers is the least common in these cases. For this reason, proper preparation of parents is essential. On the one hand, children should be taught to use the internet consciously and responsibly from early age, but on the other hand, the installation of parental control applications I highly recommended in order to keep our children safe. Parents must protect their children from violent and sexual content. The Hungarian regulation also served this purpose. Finally, I would like to congratulate the rapporteur once again and assure him of our support. Thank you, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Now I move to Marta Grande.
Grazie Presidente. Il tema di cui ci troviamo a trattare è urgente ed estremamente attuale. L'esposizione dei minori ai contenuti pornografici avrà impatti devastanti sul futuro delle nostre società. Si creano e perpetrano messaggi stereotipati e devianti sulle relazioni interpersonali e sulle relazioni sentimentali. Accogliamo con entusiasmo il passaggio del testo in cui si dichiara la necessità di un'educazione sessuale, di un'educazione emotiva, ma soprattutto di un dialogo. Se la famiglia non vuole o non sa affrontare questo tema, la scuola e la società devono essere in grado di insegnare e spiegare. Purtroppo in troppi paesi questa materia non viene affrontata in maniera né appropriata né esaustiva e tutto ciò nuoce alle nostre società. Nuoce alle dinamiche di relazione che supportano le nostre strutture sociali. Parlarne ed impegnare i nostri parlamenti è ora decisivo. Sta a noi dar seguito a questi impegni e soprattutto prendere in considerazione questi dati per dare delle risposte ai nostri paesi. Grazie.
Thank you very much indeed. I now ask Susanna Sumelzo. Do we have Susanna Sumelzo? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Buenas tardes. En mayo del 2021, hace casi un año, España aprobó la Ley de Protección a la Infancia y a la Adolescencia frente a la Violencia. Y lo hacía atendiendo al derecho de los niños y de los adolescentes a no ser objeto de ningún tipo, de ninguna forma de violencia. Y era necesaria esta nueva ley porque en los casos de violencia sobre los niños y sobre las niñas persiste una espesa capa de silencio que estamos obligados a disipar y porque la prevención de la violencia requiere sin duda de entornos seguros en todos los ámbitos de la vida y al mismo tiempo exige también la existencia de protocolos que permitan la detección precoz de posibles situaciones de violencia. La ley española, en su artículo número 1, establece y entiende como violencia el acceso a la pornografía. Por ello, consideramos imprescindible trabajar en el sentido de este magnífico informe que hoy nos han presentado. Y sin duda tenemos muchísimo trabajo por delante. La ley que aprobó el año pasado el Parlamento español, regula las actuaciones que deben realizarse y promoverse desde las administraciones públicas para garantizar el uso seguro y responsable de Internet por parte de los niños, de los adolescentes, de las familias, del personal educador y de los profesionales que trabajan con menores. Insta a las administraciones públicas a desarrollar campañas de educación, sensibilización y difusión, a realizar periódicamente diagnósticos sobre el uso de Internet en este sentido del que hoy debatimos y hablamos. Se debe fomentar también, sin duda, la colaboración con el sector privado para crear entornos digitales seguros, una mayor estandarización en el uso de la clasificación por edades y en el etiquetado inteligente de contenidos digitales. La ley también regula la obligación de las administraciones públicas para fomentar el uso de mecanismos de control parental, como se expone en el informe, de denuncia y de bloqueo para proteger a los menores del riesgo. Y nuestra ley expone la obligación de fomentar y reforzar la incorporación por parte de la industria, muy importante, de protocolos de verificación de edad en aplicaciones y servicios para impedir el acceso reservado a adultos, como nos exponía el ponente hoy aquí. Sin duda, tenemos mucho trabajo por hacer y si trabajamos en este sentido, cumpliremos nuestra obligación como legisladores y, sin duda, trabajaremos por defender los derechos de los niños y de las niñas y los adolescentes y tendremos un mundo mejor. Muchas gracias a los que han trabajado en este informe.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Monsieur Rice, is he? I can't see him in his seat, but oui.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le rapporteur, chers collègues, le développement des technologies de l'information au cours de ces dernières décennies a rendu l'accès à des contenus pornographiques facile. Les enfants, grands utilisateurs d'Internet, sont nombreux à être exposés, parfois de manière fortuite, à ces contenus nocifs pour leur développement psychologique. Ce phénomène aboutit à la banalisation de stéréotypes sexistes et de comportements socialement inacceptables. Aujourd'hui, les services répressifs font état d'une augmentation fulgurante de cas de comportements sexuels préjudiciables de la part d'enfants. C'est très inquiétant. Les enfants s'inscrivent sur leur premier réseau social à 8 ans et demi en moyenne et à 12 ans, un tiers d'entre eux ont été déjà confrontés à des images pornographiques. Des campagnes de sensibilisation sont donc indispensables pour que chacun puisse prendre conscience de l'ampleur du phénomène et des méfaits qu'il engendre, addiction, troubles du comportement, phobie sociale ou encore dépression. Lutter contre l'exposition des enfants à la pornographie nécessite d'agir à différents niveaux. En France, une proposition de loi récente, votée à l'unanimité, vise à encourager et à faciliter l'usage du contrôle parental sur certains équipements. La plupart des législations nationales prévoient des mesures de protection, mais le plus simple ne serait-il pas d'envisager l'instauration d'une norme internationale? Le législateur doit s'assurer que les sites réservés aux adultes ainsi que les réseaux sociaux généralistes comportant des contenus pour adultes utilisent des outils de vérification d'âge efficaces et ne pouvant pas être aisément contournés. Un simple clic anonyme ne constitue pas une véritable vérification. La responsabilité des fournisseurs de contenus pornographiques doit pouvoir être engagée en cas de transmission à un mineur, même si celui-ci a fait une déclaration de majorité mensongère. Même si les enseignants n'ont pas vocation à se substituer aux parents, l'école a évidemment un rôle à jouer en proposant des programmes éducatifs qui promeuvent le respect de la dignité humaine, de l'intégrité physique et de l'égalité entre filles et garçons. Les cours d'éducation à la sexualité doivent être dispensés par des professionnels dûment formés et adaptés à l'âge des enfants. Protéger les enfants est nécessaire, mais pas suffisant. Il faut les armer pour qu'ils puissent se défendre par eux-mêmes, développer leur esprit critique et leur permettre de se construire dans un environnement équilibré. Et cela passe par l'éducation. Je voterai bien évidemment en faveur de la résolution et de la recommandation qui nous sont soumises et je félicite le rapporteur pour son excellent travail.
Thank you very much indeed. Merci, Monsieur. And now I ask Lord Griffiths to take the floor.
Mr. President and colleagues, so good to be here. This report simply has to be commended. It establishes the need for action and lays the ground for future work. It needs to be invested with a sense of the greatest urgency. Others have mentioned pieces of legislation in their parliaments. In the United Kingdom, over the last 3 years, we've been giving our attention to a new bill, the Online Safety Bill, whose provisions include a number of actions intended to address this very cause. Our debates, seminars, panel discussions, consultations, inquiries, focus groups have involved leading voices in the worlds of technology, commerce, journalism, the law, the church, as well as parliamentarians. Every effort has been made to keep, and this is a core element, a duty of care running right through every aspect of the proposed legislation. That will afford some security that the protection of children will be prioritized. A few things have happened as a result of this long period of gestation. Firstly, the recognition that effective legislation on all matters relating to the internet needs to be global. Now, Lord Simons made that point, and I can skip, therefore, quickly to the second. Lawmakers are up against platforms and enterprises who've shown themselves to be motivated supremely by the need to make money. Shoshana Zuboff's 2014 classic about what she called surveillance capitalism, a new expression of power which constitutes hidden mechanisms of extraction, commodification, and control that threatens core values in society such as freedom, democracy, and privacy, which this place is all about. Our concern to protect children, if it's to be realistic, must face this threat from a commercialized technological sector openly and with passionate conviction. Thirdly, it's become increasingly clear that a robust system of age verification must be included in any proposals put forward. I was heartened to hear the rapporteur deal with this when he presented the report. And internet service providers must be held to account for any breach of the proposals we all agree on. And finally, in the short time I've been involved in frontline politics in the United Kingdom, I'm a late arrival to the scene of politics and to sitting with people like you, let me tell you. The 5 years between 2017, when a Digital Economy Act was passed by the British government, and the current Online Safety Bill, I've been able to perceive and this is important, how the internet advances far faster than the speed it takes to produce a new law or convention. By the time we've got the law and the statute book, the movement's acting somewhere else. So for the sake of our children, we must work our socks off. The interpreters will enjoy that. To act urgently and nimbly to ensure they can take full advantage of the internet whilst being protected from its worst features. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Lord Griffiths. And now, Madam Nuralayeva is, I think, online. Yes, good.
Dear Mr. President, the honorable members of the Council, initially I would like to thank Mr. Hubron and Mr. Shenik for holding such an accurate report on the means and provisions to combat children's exposure to pornographic content. I advocate that children should be able to access and safely engage in the digital environment without being harmed by exposure to pornography. It has been shown to affect the brain like a drug by undermining people's ability to have normal sexual relationships in the long term that are necessary for establishing healthy marriages and families. Looking at the case of Azerbaijan, I would highlight some laws such as the Law on Protecting Children from Harmful Information, Article 242 of the Criminal Code, Article 10 of the Law on Mass Media, and Article 35 of the Law on Television and Radio Broadcasting, which prevent the promotion of pornographic content for inadequate groups. I would like to make some proposals regarding the prevention of children's access to pornographic content. To mention it specifically, Member States should pass laws requiring computer and smartphone companies to pre-install filters on all devices they sell that access the internet. Such content filters can block access to content on the internet harmful to children. These filters would not be easily turned off, relying on techniques that maximize parental control, such as only providing codes to adults who want to deactivate them. Moreover, I think that schools should have a bigger role in educating children about pornography. It will be better to include this topic in the curriculum in order to build a child's resilience and make a clear distinction between real-life relationships and the fiction of porn. Furthermore, I would like to emphasize the importance of preventing the wider sexualization of popular culture. It will disallow children to have access to explicit sexual images in films, television, music, videos, and games. I'm assured that the implementation of such policies will successfully prevent children's access to pornographic content. Let's work diligently to improve children's lives who are our hope and future for a better world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now, is Madame de Timmerman in the hall? Elle est dans la salle? No? Okay, then we move on to Mr. Yildiz. Is yes, Madam. Sorry, my apologies, Madam Yildiz.
No problem. We have the same surname with my colleague. Dear President, dear colleagues, I congratulate Mr. Dimitri Hubron for his report, a crucial step to develop mechanisms to protect the children's exposure for the harmful content. It's all accepted that widespread digitalization has a benefit for all of us. However, there are also increasing risks of digitalization, particularly for children, without any restrictions regarding age or competence. Children can easily have their own smartphones or tablets and even their own social media accounts. So, in an insufficiently regulated online environment, they are at significant risk of exposure to harmful content. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has also accelerated these risks by increasing screen time and decreasing parents' supervision. What is more, it's also hard to estimate its effects since never before children have been exposed to as much harmful content as today. Studies show that depression and anxiety are consequences of early exposure to harmful content. Hence, to protect the mental well-being of our children, states and parents, as the primary regulator of children's online activities, should co-work together in this realm by developing harm minimization strategies. I think that while parents have some controlling role in planning to protect children from exposure to harmful content, states should also ensure regulatory measures are applied to internet providers. For example, clear rules and regulations should exist and strictly be controlled whether they are applied. In Turkey, the law numbered 5651, sexual abuse of children, is among the crimes committed on internet. When the abuse of the child is in question, the removal of the content from the internet environment is compulsory. Having international accessibility, bearing in mind that reality, to strengthen the international cooperation has also a crucial role in protecting children from all kinds of abuse, as being mentioned in the report. Besides enhancing parental control, regulatory framework should not be left out. In order to achieve the objectives presented in this report, all member states need to contribute these efforts by enhancing their regulatory mechanisms on this issue. We must defend the right of young boys to be a boy. We must defend the right of young girls to be a girl. We must provide a medium that the children can live their childhood. We must protect the children on every platform from all kinds of abuse. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And now I call Karina Olsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, thank you, I will say, to the rapporteurs for a very important report. As we can read in the report, exposure of children to pornographic content is a growing concern in Europe and across the whole world. Children, in some cases, at a very young age, access and share pornographic content at home, at school, or with friends in their neighborhoods or online. A Swedish survey shows that a large majority of the Swedish people want a legislation that restricts the spread of porn to children under 18 on the internet. For teenagers, as many as 79% state that they want legislation that protects themselves against pornography. Only 7% of young people do not want legislation. A girl who applied for support from an organization, Young Relations, she writes, "My boyfriend, he will kill me if it continues like this. He commits brutal rapes. He has sick porn fantasies. As he performs with me against my will, I am so afraid." And she's not alone in her experience. Organizations who work against men's and boys' violence against women and girls have for many years been alerted to the harmful effects of today's completely unrelated internet porn. The research is clear with the influence of porn, and reports and studies shows that sexual abuse of girls and young women is increasing. Police and criminologists who investigate sexual crimes say that the perpetrators themselves refer to porn as inspiration for abuse. Receptions for rape alarms, midwives alarms, and young people call themselves a porn-damaged generation. Surveys show that 70% of women in Sweden do not watch porn, while 70% of men do. 41% of all boys between the age of 16 to 29 watch porn frequently, daily or almost daily. It is this large group who watch every day who are most affected and who are looking for courses and courses materials. It is the consumers who make the porn industry make money by exploiting people and spreading it freely to young people. Legislation that limits the harmful effects of porn on children under the age of 18 is the least we can do together until we get legislation that also protects and provides redress for the women and girls who are exposed in the production of porn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we go to Canada and Larry Brock, who I believe is online.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear Rapporteur and colleagues, as a new member of Parliament, I'm delighted to speak for the first time in this Assembly, although this topic is a difficult one. Difficult because it presents hard challenges that we must solve, and difficult because we know about the harmful impacts on children from exposure to pornography. As a Canadian, it is helpful to participate in these discussions. A real, workable solution to these challenges will require international cooperation. We know, for instance, that if one country imposes age verification mechanisms on pornography websites, then many consumers of pornography will simply find websites from other countries that have fewer barriers between them and the content they are seeking. Canada's Parliament is working to solve these challenges. In 2017, our House of Commons Committee on Health reported on the health effects caused by the viewing of violent and degrading sexually explicit material online. The committee called for, amongst other things, more investment in sexual health promotion strategies and education for young people and parents, as well as for the development of better content filters to protect children online. In 2021, our House of Commons Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics tabled a report regarding the protection of privacy and reputation on online pornography platforms. This included an examination of non-consensual material and other illegal content posted online. It recommended that the government develop clear regulations to require internet service providers to be more legally accountable for content moderation. Our Senate Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs is currently studying a bill that seeks to hold organizations criminally responsible for making sexually explicit material available to young people over the internet for commercial purposes. To avoid liability, they would need to implement an age verification system. While we don't know if this bill will become law, the evidence presented by Canadian experts before the committee is concerning. I have no doubt this evidence is similar to what you're also hearing in your own countries. These witnesses explain the harmful health impacts that young people may experience from exposure to pornography, particularly when it depicts violent sexual images and misogyny. Some young people see pornography by accident and are too young to understand what they are seeing. Some of the evidence suggests that the pornography used by young people can result in more permissive attitudes around sex, objectification of women, violence against women, earlier ages of sex initiation, risky sex behavior, sexual aggression, depression, anxiety, or lack of empathy for rape victims. These are just a few of the examples of our work our Parliament is doing to better address these issues. We are also watching what European countries are doing and eager to learn your lessons, best practices, and workable solutions. If we find ways to address these challenges together, our efforts are certainly more likely to succeed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. And now I call Cholin McCrory.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the rapporteur for his hard work on this very important issue. And I speak today as a member of the United Kingdom Parliament, but more importantly as a mother. And I know that I speak for every parent in this room when I say that we would do anything to protect our children. And we all deserve the peace of mind that they are protected from online things that they should not see. In fact, it's my opinion that every adult in this world has a duty to protect the children and the concept of an innocent childhood, whether they be a parent or a politician or even a tech company executive. And since the World Wide Web was launched in the early 1990s, it has revolutionized information sharing, and in doing so has dramatically altered the way we communicate. The technology has developed rapidly and continues to do so, with apps and sites and gaming becoming a global phenomenon. The internet, however, was developed assuming an ideal world where all users were honest and respectful of others. But sadly, we know this is not the case. And the internet has facilitated a long list of dangers, including enabling children to access damaging content online. As we've already heard, research is now conclusive that accessing this content impacts the way that young people understand healthy relationships, sex, and the issue of consent. And it can normalize abusive behavior. Half of parents in the UK worry that online pornography is giving their kids an unrealistic view of sex. And more than half of mums fear that it gives their kids a poor portrayal of women. This is why people are rightly asking governments and technology companies to step up and act. Big tech companies have the opportunity and the resources to ensure that their platforms are designed to be safe for children. And there is no excuse not to put our children's safety first. But many popular tech companies fail and have failed to put these safeguarding measures in place. Years of self-regulation failure by the big tech companies and the ever-changing nature of technology and children going online more and more at even younger ages means that comprehensive regulation from governments, global governments, is now urgently needed. In my opinion, children have the right to learn, play and communicate with friends safely without fear of avoidable risk and harm. But online, this is just not yet enshrined in law, and this is why the UK government's proposed online harms bill is one that I have expressed my support for in Parliament. It is so important. For the first time, we will create a legal duty of care on companies to identify and eradicate avoidable harm to children on their sites before they are put at risk. But let's not be complacent. Legislation must keep up with fast-moving technology. The bill includes a new legal duty requiring that all sites that publish pornography to put robust checks in place to ensure that their users are 18 years old or over. If sites fail to act, the independent regulator Ofcom will be able to fine them up to 10% of their annual worldwide turnover, or can block them from being accessible in the UK at all. These measures will have a clear and immediate effect and encourage policymakers worldwide to take inspiration from this groundbreaking action so we can achieve the aim that we all want, which is a safer place for children, protecting their precious childhoods.
Thank you very much indeed. And we now go to Licia Vasilenko. There you are. Yeah.
The topic in this report is extremely important to tackle in the highly digitalized age that we live in. I would like to thank the rapporteur, first and foremost, also as a mother. I have 2 young children, and everything that I've read in this report is actually a very detailed analysis which provides a guideline for parents and governments alike. Age verification software, laws obliging device manufacturers to strengthen parental control, black and white lists of domains and websites are definitely something all our governments should take on board. Before Russia escalated its aggression in Ukraine to a full-fledged war, the Ukrainian government had an excellent track record for digitalization and was working on instruments in the realm of protecting children's rights too. And I probably could have been saying more about this today. However, 2 months ago, Russia's aggression paused all development projects in Ukraine. So today, when I talk about children's rights and online safety for our children, I have to raise the issue of physical safety and security of the children of Ukraine. Apart from killing 215 children in less than 62 days, Russia has also created conditions where children become victims of sexual crimes, fall prey to human traffickers, become part of the sex slave and pornographic industry. The 4.5 million children of Ukraine have become displaced as a result of Russia's war. 2 million of these children have found themselves abroad, often in very vulnerable circumstances. Today, I would like to draw the attention of all the honourable members of this Assembly to this very fact, and to the fact that it is important to understand that most countries assembled here lack protocols to monitor the rights of displaced children travelling on their own or without documents. Moreover, it is important to note that the children fall prey to traffickers through the very online tools referred in the report. When seeking help and trying to find homes, Ukrainians often use forums, employment websites, social media, matching websites. All of these tools are also used by traffickers and various criminals that target children in particular. Governments today must exert utmost efforts to have a better understanding of platforms through which displaced and refugee children may be targeted and contacted by criminal elements. These must be proactive monitoring of high-risk platforms to identify patterns of sexual exploitation. Online platforms should proactively enable default safety and privacy settings for minors. Moreover, governments should budget for increased online undercover operations, and proper financing should be allocated to these. Partnerships between law enforcement, tech companies, and NGOs must also be enhanced. These are just a few suggestions. There's an extensive list which has already been adopted by the OSCE on the 22nd of April, to which we can all refer to and to which we can point our governments in. It's a united effort, again, that we must all make for the safety and security of all our children and the exposure they have today to these crimes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now move to Mr. Gusti Gras.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, les dernières décennies, nous avons pu assister à une propagation énorme de la culture numérique. La digitalisation s'est emparée d'un grand nombre de domaines de vie et son progrès est imparable. Et pourtant, son évolution est une arme à double tranchant. Certes, source d'énormes possibilités, la culture numérique peut en revanche également porter préjudice aux plus vulnérables d'entre nous, à nos enfants, à nos jeunes. L'expression anglaise « The world at your fingertips » décrit de façon pertinente le contexte actuel. Plus que jamais, il nous est possible d'accéder à une multitude d'informations juste par un simple clic, dans tous les domaines et pour tous les sujets. Or, dans ce contexte, deux faits sont connus. Des contenus pornographiques sont aussi plus accessibles que jamais et le contact précoce avec ces images nuit à la santé mentale de nos enfants. Il est aujourd'hui facile de rechercher et trouver des contenus adultes. Il est aussi très probable d'être exposé à des contenus juste en naviguant à travers les sphères éternelles de l'Internet. Des publicités et des liens sont dispersés à travers le web afin de leurrer les utilisateurs directement vers ces programmes. Or, la visualisation de matériaux pornographiques confronte les jeunes à des scénarios irréalistes et provoque des attentes illusoires. En regardant ces produits plus ou moins explicites, des contraintes se développent dans l'esprit des jeunes. Ils s'implantent chez eux la pensée que leurs relations doivent suivre l'exemple. Et plus ces contenus sont visualisés, plus cette idée se fixe dans leur tête. Avec le temps, les pratiques visualisées, l'objectivisation de la femme, la brutalité même de certains contenus deviennent un but. Si, en l'occurrence, ce but n'est pas satisfait, des frustrations se développent. Les jeunes ne savent plus répondre à leurs attentes et finalement, un comportement agressif, voire intrusif, peut en découler. Monsieur le Président, les parents et l'école jouent un rôle important dans l'éducation. Il faut davantage sensibiliser le public. Dans mon pays, par exemple, le Luxembourg, aura lieu au mois de mai une campagne afférente organisée par le Centre national de référence pour la promotion de la santé affective et sexuelle. Il est dans ce contexte également question d'un bouton d'alerte permettant aux jeunes de dénoncer des contenus explicites. L'utilité d'un tel bouton est évidente et néanmoins, il faut aussi éviter que le sexe en tant que tel devienne un sujet tabou. Bien que les contenus ciblés soient inappropriés pour un jeune public, il ne faut en aucun cas viser un isolement total des jeunes du sujet même. Il ne suffit guère de protéger les jeunes. Il faut également démystifier le sexe par une éducation adaptée, le traiter de façon ouverte et raisonnable. Il faut apprendre aux jeunes une relation saine avec leur corps et encourager des relations solides avec leur entourage. Ceci afin qu'ils sachent aborder le sujet naturellement et sans gêne. C'est ainsi que nous élèverons des enfants à devenir des jeunes adultes responsables. Finalement, permettez-moi de féliciter M. Hubron pour son excellent rapport. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. And now I move to our last speaker. I must close the list after this speaker. Lucy Monson from Canada. She is online. Yes. Then I pass over to her.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chers parlementaires, le débat sur une évaluation des moyens et des dispositifs de lutte contre l'exposition des enfants au contenu pornographique est très d'actualité. Comme vous l'avez entendu un peu plus tôt dans l'allocution de mon collègue, le Parlement canadien est également aux prises avec les défis que pose l'exposition des enfants à la pornographie en ligne. Actuellement, au Canada, le Code criminel n'interdit pas la simple mise en disposition de matériel sexuellement explicite à des enfants à des fins commerciales. Est considérée une infraction quand ce matériel est partagé dans le but de faciliter la commission d'autres infractions ou de commettre d'autres violations. Il existe bien sûr d'autres lois pénales portant sur diverses infractions sexuelles et sur le matériel obscène. Le Sénat canadien étudie actuellement un projet de loi qui rendrait les organisations pénalement responsables de protéger sur Internet du matériel sexuellement explicite à des jeunes pour des fins commerciales. Et ce n'est pas protéger, mais propager. Pour éviter toute responsabilité, ces organisations seraient tenues de mettre en place des systèmes de vérification de l'âge. L'étude de ce projet de loi soulève plusieurs défis à prendre en compte. Je n'en mentionnerai que 3. Le premier relève de la difficulté de créer une loi qui respecte d'autres droits concurrents pour les adultes. Regarder de la pornographie est une activité légale au Canada pour les adultes qui ont droit à leur vie privée et à la protection de leur liberté d'expression. Le commissaire à la protection de la vie privée du Canada a souligné l'importance de veiller à ce que toute loi visant à imposer la vérification de l'âge soit conforme aux lois sur la protection de la vie privée. Il a ajouté, et je cite, « L'adoption de pratiques claires concernant la façon de vérifier l'âge des utilisateurs contribuera à réduire les risques de fuite, d'utilisation non autorisée ou d'atteinte à la réputation. » Le second est associé à de la technologie, à savoir si elle peut fournir à la fois une vérification efficace de l'âge tout en empêchant les violations de données personnelles. Le troisième est en lien avec l'application de la loi. Les forces de l'ordre doivent disposer de ressources nécessaires pour enquêter sur les transgresseurs et les poursuivre en justice. Lorsque les sites Internet sont logés sur des serveurs à l'extérieur de nos pays respectifs, la coopération internationale devient alors essentielle si nous voulons faire cesser la prolifération du matériel pornographique en ligne. Chaque pays doit déterminer la meilleure façon d'assurer le respect de leurs lois et se demander si le droit pénal est la meilleure option ou si une approche réglementaire ne serait pas plus efficace. Grâce à des débats comme celui-ci, nous pouvons tous mieux nous informer afin de légiférer sur ces questions dans nos parlements respectifs. Avant de clore mon allocution, je voudrais remercier le rapporteur Houbron pour son rapport, ainsi que remercier ma collègue sénatrice Méville Dechaine d'y avoir contribué. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you very much indeed. I must now, unfortunately, interrupt the list of speakers. The speeches of members who are on the speakers list and who have been present physically or remotely during the debate but have not been able to speak may be given to the table office, and that will be for publication in the official report, provided that speakers connected remotely can report their actual presence when the debate is closed. I remind colleagues that typewritten texts must be submitted electronically no later than 4 hours after the list of speakers is interrupted. And I now call Monsieur Houbron, the rapporteur, to reply to the debate, and you have 3 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, chers collègues, pour ces témoignages, ces partages d'expériences dans nos États respectifs. Merci pour le soutien de la plupart, voire la quasi-totalité d'entre vous, aux préconisations de ce rapport. Je pense que ça a été dit, l'impact sur nos enfants et finalement sur notre société même est considérable. L'exposition entraîne des troubles psychiques, des comportements qu'on peut qualifier de déviants, des comportements sexuels compliqués, voire violents avec leurs partenaires. Et on constate de plus en plus cette jeune génération reproduire ce qu'elle a pu constater par le téléphone portable très facilement. dans la vie de tous les jours, avec finalement une matière judiciaire qui est aujourd'hui chargée de répondre, alors que nous le voyons aujourd'hui, nous avons tous les outils pour lutter efficacement contre cette exposition. Bien sûr, des outils numériques, technologiques, avec les vérifications de l'âge, avec les contrôles parentaux par défaut sur les outils numériques, mais pas seulement. Et vous l'avez toutes et tous souligné, le sujet majeur de la prévention, de la sensibilisation de nos jeunes publics, de nos jeunes enfants, au sein des écoles, avec une formation indispensable pour le corps enseignant, avec, et ça a été dit également, le fait d'aborder ces sujets sans tabou, parce que les enfants ont besoin aussi d'avoir des explications pour des images qu'ils ne peuvent pas comprendre étant si jeunes. Et parfois, lorsque la famille ne peut pas, n'a pas non plus les outils pour apporter ces précisions à l'enfant, il nous faut, en tant qu'État, en tant que représentant de l'État, apporter des réponses. Et je pense que ces recommandations que je vous propose, en tout cas, d'accepter ce soir, eh bien, répondent encore en partie à cette problématique. Et puis, ça a été indiqué, nous avons un enjeu respectif dans nos assemblées, de voter des dispositions légales qui permettent d'apporter des réponses, mais il nous faudra véritablement une coopération internationale, à la fois bien sûr des organes publics, mais aussi des organes privés, pour que cet objectif soit bien rempli et que l'ensemble des acteurs soient partie prenante à cette ambition commune. En tout cas, les échanges que nous venons d'avoir me laissent présager beaucoup d'optimisme sur l'avenir et sur la protection de nos enfants, et je vous remercie encore pour votre soutien.
Thank you very much. And I now call on Ms. Celine Saïk-Burka, who is the chair of the Committee on Social Affairs, Health and Sustainable Development, to reply to the debate. And you have 3 minutes also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, so I take the floor now as the chair of the Committee on Social Affairs, Health and Sustainable Development, with the objective of hopefully giving a summary of what has already been debated in the plenary, I think in a very unified way. Clearly, today, children's exposure to pornography is massive and largely uncontrolled. And there seems to be an agreement, even in this plenary, that such exposure is detrimental to children's well-being. Hence, it is our duty to make sure that we have the proper policy and instruments. And while this is the case, many measures have been taken by several of our member states. However, we fail to protect our children as of today. Therefore, we need a discussion as such. And unfortunately, efforts to regulate content and to restrict children's access to pornography have not kept pace with the technological shift that's ongoing. So clearly, we need a coherent and comprehensive approach for the online safety of our very own children. And this report is a step in that direction. So I'd like to congratulate our rapporteur, and in advance, I'd like to thank our secretariat, the opinion, the Secretariat of the Equality Committee, as well as every member who has contributed to this very critical discussion. And indeed, it's not an easy one, given the complex interplay between the right to privacy, the right to freedom of expression, and the right to protection from violence. Therefore, we have to be very careful in our design. There is also an inherent tension between the profitability of an industry and that of public interest. We have to be very careful in our design, in making sure that we put children's well-being well in front of profits. At the same time, there are a plethora of useful tools and levers that can help address and prevent children's exposure to pornography that are compliant with other rights and freedoms. We do have the instruments to do so. What we need is the political will to do it. And I believe this report and the debate we've had so far is proof that that political will is actually in place. So once again, I congratulate Mr. Ubran. I sincerely hope that this report will encourage each and every one of us to step up relevant parliamentary work in our very own parliaments. I also hope that it will lead to stronger parliamentary cooperation at the European and international level. As was said rightfully, this is a global issue, and therefore it requires our concerted action. And I'm very happy to see that action has grounds over here. So I invite our colleagues to support this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that brings this debate to a close, and I would like to thank everyone who has participated for making this a very interesting and fascinating debate. Now, the Committee on Social Affairs, Health and Sustainable Development has presented a draft resolution, which is document 15494, to which 2 amendments have been tabled, and a draft recommendation to which no amendments have been tabled. So let's start with consideration of the draft resolution, and then we will consider the draft recommendation. I understand that the chairperson of the Committee on Social Affairs, Health and Sustainable Development wishes to propose to the Assembly that amendments 1 and 2 to the draft resolution, which were unanimously approved by the Committee, should be declared as agreed by the Assembly. Is that so, Ms. Boker?
Yes, that is so.
Does anyone object? If so, please ask for the floor by raising your hand. No. As there is no objection, I declare that amendments 1 and 2 to the draft resolution have been agreed. And now, if you'll just allow me to turn over my pages. We will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 15494. A simple majority is required. The vote in the hemicycle and via remote voting is now open. Okay, I think that's okay. Yeah. The vote is now closed, and I call for the result to be displayed. And there we have it. The resolution is unanimously adopted. Congratulations. We will now proceed to vote on the draft recommendation contained in document 15494. Members present in the chamber should use the hemicycle voting system, and members participating remotely should vote using the remote voting system. Both votes are now open. The vote is now closed, and I call for the result to be displayed. And there we have it, another unanimous recommendation. Thank you very much. The Assembly will hold its next public sitting tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the agenda which was approved this afternoon. The sitting is now adjourned.